right, it's your brother Zion Lex. Sign up for our online academy, which is Learn Torah Hebrew Academy at patreon.com/Learn Torah. There are several classes that we offer. We offer a Biblical Hebrew 101 class for beginners. We have a Biblical Hebrew 102 class for people who are a little bit more advanced. We also have a weekly Torah class. We also have our Patriarchs of the Covenant course, our Matriarchs of the Covenant course, and a bi-weekly rabbinical course. All of these courses can be found on Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/Learn Torah. You guys were definitely in for it. It's a very invasive class. All of our classes are deeply invasive and very, very meticulous to the T when it comes to understanding the culture, the heritage, and the history of our ancient ancestors. So sign up for Biblical Hebrew at patreon.com/Learn Torah. I am your brother, Zion Lex. Shalom, shalom, family. This is your brother Avdiel Ben Levi, otherwise known as Zion Lex. Go to Amazon and purchase all of my books. Type in my author name, Avdiel Ben Levi, or you can also type in Zion Lex. There you'll find some of my earliest books and my latest works. It was written and engraved. The DNA of Sound, The Star of David Controversy, Ancient Kemet on Trial, Patriarchs of the Covenant, Matriarchs of the Covenant, and my two foremost books that are critically acclaimed on Amazon, and even one has become a bestseller, and that's going to be the Messiah Codex Volume 1 and Messiah Codex Volume 2. So go to Amazon.com today, type in my name, Avdiel Ben Levi, otherwise known as Zion Lex, and there you can purchase all of my books. Peace and shalom, family. All right. Shalom, shalom, family. We were supposed to be live about a half hour ago. Thank you all for your patience. My apologies. I was running a bit late, but here we are, and we are ready. Yes, as you guys can see, it's a heavy, heavy topic. Before I even say any more, let me first introduce my co-host for this evening, Moreh, Miykael, Korban Yahu.
Yes,
shalom, Moreh. How you doing?
Shalom, Akitu, Cole, all is well. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. It's that tis the season. Tis is the real season.
Right. Yes, sir.
You know, beautiful. Tis the season to get beautiful. Right with God. And try to mend, broken fences with your fellow man, your brother, your sister,
and yourself.
And yourself. I'm glad you added that element, because sometimes we make promises to ourselves that we don't even fulfill, and we're not living up to standards that we set. So yeah, we owe an apology to ourselves too. That's right. That's an amazing way of looking at it. Sometimes though, I want to admit to you, man, sometimes I need to stop watching social media.
Get off the internet.
And what I mean by that is the amount of people fronting on Facebook, holding Facebook Rosh Hashanah and Yom Teruah vigils. Wow. And if thou hast been offended by me over yonder and thither, then thou mayest reach out to me over hither and further. Wow. Stop it.
Right.
That's not what the Creator is talking about.
My goodness.
So, it's an interesting community, ever evolving, ever changing, never growing. And sometimes you see and witness things that make you go, oh, okay. But I just want to assure people that the repair that needs to happen, the tikkun, the rectification that needs to happen, doesn't necessarily need to happen on Facebook. You don't owe anybody a Facebook shout out on your public post to say, hey, anybody I offended, jump on this post and speak now or forever hold your shalom.
Come on, man. Come on.
You don't need to do that. It's best that if there are people that you personally believe that you have offended, that you only connect with them via social media, then private message them.
Yes, sir.
I'm a private person, Moreh. I want to be deeply honest with you. I'm very private. I'm on a need to know basis with all things and everything. If you don't need to know, I ain't letting you know.
Wisdom.
So I'm so private that if I have a problem with somebody, we don't need to make that problem public. That's between me and you. Yes, even if you offend him, especially if it's you that offended me.
Yes, sir.
Some people are afraid for their public mess to be out because they have offended people. I'm different.
I get it.
I don't even want when you offend me that you go on social media and talk about it, because I consider that our personal business. I'm not going to air out how you offended me on social media. I'm not that kind of Hebrew.
It's deep. Hey, real
Abdul,
quick,
yeah,
Mashiach gave us a formula too. He tells us, if somebody has offended you, go to your brother, go to your sister. If they don't hear you, bring two witnesses,
there you
right?
go.
Then you present it to the community. But this is for the sake of healing and rectification. This ain't just to be getting likes. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Healing. And if they don't hear you, then right, it says treat them like a tax collector or a Gentile.
Come on.
Right. But it's just like when you read in the Torah, when it says if we're going out to war, offer peace to the city first. If they don't receive your peace, lay it siege. You know what I'm saying? So it's just the principle that we're dealing with, man. So that's a beautiful point you raise, Op.
You're not even lying, my brother. You're not even lying. And on this topic of needing to get right with man, I want to just remind everybody that the horn has been blown.
So cool.
Yom Teruah has
Yeah.
passed.
Right.
And we're drawing near to
Then,
the day, time, and season of judgment.
mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't mean anything to us now, it's gonna mean something to us then. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And what we come to knowledge of with this awakening, coming to the Torah and the scriptures, is that not only are we aware of the impending judgment, but thank God that we are aware of the remedy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's one thing to know that judgment is coming. It's one thing to be given a diagnosis. It's another thing to understand what is the cure. And the Creator
Remedy.
gave us all that. That's different, brother, because what a lot of people don't know is that the season of judgment that's upon us is not just for the house of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
It's the entire world.
Yes, sir.
And virtually no one knows it
Mm-hmm.
of us. I say virtually because some ancient communities are tapped in who are non-Israelites.
Mm-hmm.
And they know about this season. They call it by different names.
Mm-hmm.
They keep it a little before or a little after us, but they are aware.
Right.
Right. So we're going to touch on
That's
most of
good.
that towards the tail end of the conversation. But
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to begin my bill with you, Moreh, by talking about the greatness of Abraham Avinu.
Yes, sir.
Abraham, our forefather. So if you can, talk to us a bit about Abraham's origin in the lands of Mesopotamia. Paint that picture for us.
Yeah. Praise Yah. First and foremost, I want to give all praise to Abba Yah and to our Mashiach Yahushua ben Yosef. Man, it's an honor to be here with you again, brother. And so, looking at Avinu Abraham, I recall from some of the oral traditions, specifically Yasher, that his birth was announced with some constellation signs, right? The stars in the heavens swallowed up. One star swallowed up, I believe, 3 stars it talks about. And the wise men saw this going home, and they're like, we need to tell this to the king. Like, this is a major threat, right? And so his birth, like many of our Mashiachim who have, had signs prefiguring their appearance, was with a sign. So Abraham was predestined to have this prominent position in Yah's kingdom and bringing it back to earth. And so that precipitated Nimrod, Amraphel, some call him as well Ninus. There's many different names that he has that, he is known by.
Mm-hmm.
Sent a decree out to destroy this baby. He even told Terah, his right-hand man, his high priest, you brought that up last time, to destroy this child, right? So he brings a concubine's child, destroys that child while he slips him out under the pale of darkness back to his land of the patriarchs and matriarchs, which is in Canaan. He's now in the tents of Shem and Eber.
Mm.
So his early formative years were raised in the land of Shem, originally known as the land of Shem before Canaan squatted on it. And he was initiated and taught into the teachings of Yah. His early years were entirely entrenched and immersed in the teachings of Yah. And so after he went through his bar mitzvah, it's known that he went back to Ur of
Okay.
Chaldea, right? Why he went back, now that's the question I have to look into myself. But he goes back to Ur of Chaldea, where he now is immersed back into this world of idolatry. So he goes and receives the teachings of the true and living El. Then he goes back to Ur of Chaldea, where there is an entire pantheon of gods that is being worshipped, and their idols, and just a whole lifestyle that is contrary to everything that he was just immersed in with his forefathers, that taught him the ways of Yah. And so in dealing with that, he's now having to wrestle within himself, of what's what, who's who, and who is Yah, right? And so this is where you see that dark night of the soul, where he goes through all the sun, moon, and stars, and trying to figure this out of who the El is, because you can be taught, for many of your years of life, but you eventually have to come to experience life. You have to come to receive that
That's right.
revelation. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
right.
Like,
That's right.
you even look at Samuel in the first Samuel chapter 3, Yah's calling him. He didn't know Yah was calling him. He was raised up though in the culture until he received that revelation. So Abraham had to go through that as well. And that's what many of us have to go through as well. Yeah, we can read and study Torah and study the prophets and the writings and even the New Testament all day, but until we actually have it activated in us, the same thing Abraham had to go through, right? And that's the beautiful thing about Abraham. And so we get to a point where he actually comes to his conclusions. He notices in his father's um, house that he has all these idols, and we talked about this as well. And he chops up all the idols, right? And then he actually leaves the axe in the largest idol's hand, which he kept. And his father comes home and is devastated. What have you done? Like, what? No, I didn't do this. The gods did this. He said, the gods don't even live. They can't do that. They're idols. and
Talk
so
to us.
and so he's like, then why do you worship them, Abba? What's your point of worshiping them? And so that's the question that Terah got stuck with. But eventually it gets back to Nimrod. Nimrod then seizes him again and seeks to throw him in a furnace. His brother Nahor, I believe, was going to go with him because he's like, he's tottering as well. He's like, if Abraham comes out of the fire, I'll serve him. Yeah, but if he's not, I'm going to continue to serve all these other gods. And so Abraham endures the fire, comes out unscathed, eventually leaves, takes Lot with him, and then the rest we read in Scripture
That's a
of what
fact.
takes
That's a
place.
fact.
Yes,
That's a
sir.
fact. You know what always intrigued me about Father Abraham historically is that we learn about the amazing journey whilst in the land of Canaan, but for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's his transition and the phase before his transition into the land of Canaan that
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
really focus on, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
conversation that occurs on how are we to look at Abraham as a historical figure. Is he a
Mm-hmm.
Canaanite?
Mm-hmm.
Is he an Israelite?
Mm-hmm.
Is he to be considered a Mesopotamian, namely from the region of Sumer?
Mm.
Right? So there's some issues here, right?
Yeah.
So Abraham leaves Mesopotamia, southern Mesopotamia, and comes into Canaan land. So he himself is not a Canaanite.
Right.
He's also not an Israelite because Israelites come from
One
him,
around, yeah.
right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So in Abraham's lifetime, if an ID card is issued to him, and that ID card has to say that so and so is from this land, this region,
Right.
and is known by this ethnicity, then
Mm.
Abraham is a Sumerian.
Yes, he is.
And a lot of people wrestle with that because Sumerians as a nation state crumbles under the sword of Sargon
Okay.
in 2300 BC.
Good call.
Right, the king of the Akkadians, Agad,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And by Agad, I don't mean AGOD, but AGA,
Hey,
right?
yeah.
So for those who understand the linguistics, where Akkadian comes from, the Agad, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Sargon of Akkad, the Akkadian, conquers the region of Sumer in 2300 BC. But what's interesting about that, and this is where a lot of historical knowledge is important, the people living in southern Mesopotamia at the time that Sumer is the ruling city-state are not a monolith. There's many different ethnicities that are there present. You even have Cushites
In this Kush, yes, sir.
in this region.
Yes,
You
sir.
also have large groups of Semites.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in
Mm-hmm.
Samuel Noah Kramer's book, The Sumerians, he points out that the oldest place names for all of the Sumerian cities are all Semitic. and are
Mm,
non-Sumerian.
my goodness.
Yeah, he posits this at the tail end of his book, like starting from page 250 and onwards,
Yeah.
where he reveals that all of the ancient place names in the region of southern Mesopotamia under the banner of the Sumerians,
Mhm.
all of the names for their cities
That's
are
Semitic.
all Semitic,
That's powerful.
which tells the historian something.
Right.
The pre Sumerian population was more than likely a hashmash of Semitic speaking people. And
Mm.
this is why the oldest place names are all Semitic and not Sumerian, because Sumerian
Hmm.
as a language is treated as a language isolate, right, from the realm of linguistics and
Hmm.
from the realm
Hmm.
of historians. The
Hmm.
Sumerian language is referred to as a language isolate because they say there's no language that's quite like it, even though that
Mm.
is slowly being debunked through linguistics and etymology. We can see that it's related to ancient Hebrew. We
Right.
can see that it's related to ancient Aramaic. We can see that it's related to the Niger Congo
My
languages.
goodness. There you
Right?
go.
There's an amazing author, Catherine Ojulanu, who presents some amazing work to show how Sumerian language is related to the Niger Congo speaking languages, and even what we refer to today as Bantu tribes, with the Bantu languages.
Right
I
there.
have it. Have many of them have Semitic cognates.
Hmm.
Um, Another notable personality that is alive today, author and historian and California University professor Remy Ilona, he also bears witness that language spoken by the Igbo bears several Sumerian cognates.
Wow.
So we can no longer today, based on newer available evidence, state
Right.
that Sumerian is a language isolate when we can see it present in modern and ancient languages,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? But
Right.
again, on the topic of Abraham, we would have to classify Abraham as a Sumerian, not because he's living at a time when Sumerians are ruling, but he's living at a time where there's a resurgence of Sumerian culture, right? He lives, Abraham, in 2000 BC, circa
Mm.
2000 BC.
Right.
This is around the time of what historians refer to as the third dynasty of Ur, otherwise known as the Sumerian Renaissance period. Right? Any Renaissance, as you know, is a resurgence of the culture of that region. So, with the emergence of the third dynasty of Ur, comes now a resurgence of Sumerian culture by
Mm.
Semitic people,
Wow.
because a huge part of Sumerian culture owes its origin to Semitic
Mm.
early culture. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's powerful, and you have to really look at the dispersion. Genesis 10, Genesis 11. You can see
Mhm.
how the migration had taken place. As well from Scripture. But historically, the points you raise are so important, and I want to bring into that equation the Sagiga people, right? The
Come on.
blackheads, and so that also lends to the understanding that these people were also melanated, heavily melanated peoples, right? And I
Come
see you
on.
going to the doggone to the archives to get the books, and that's so
Oh,
needed.
oh yeah. I always tell people
Yes, sir.
this bookshelf over here is the Africana and
Mhm.
ancient history bookshelf.
Yeah,
This right here is the Torah archives.
beautiful, beautiful.
That's
And
the
so,
Torah
looking at
archive.
the Afro-Asiatic influence, though, you look at the African presence in early Asia. These are books like Ivan Van Sertima who've lended to that particular um, thrust of knowledge and understanding that these peoples that inhabited these lands. In fact, all the valleys societies, they were all inhabited by melanated people, and so even going as far as the Yellow River Valley, But when we look specifically at the Euphrates Valley and we're looking at the Sumerian culture, the Renaissance was dealing with the resurgence of, not only spiritual matters and religious matters, but also you look at that astrotheology, you look at all the different sciences that had advanced and really spread from the quote unquote Babylonian mind, their
Mm,
influence that they have through the astrotheology, paradigm is worldwide. In fact, I was reading something. I was listening to something the other day, and it was talking about all astrologers, pretty much in the ancient world, were called Chaldeans because of the
yes.
Chaldean influence. that
Yes.
they had in the astrological world. So, I mean, what you speak of is so important to understand, and then to know that Abraham was a mind that was not only shaped by his, his forefathers, but also by the Babylonian or the Chaldean mind as well. Because while they did have idolatry present, there's some things, just like when you look at Moshe, that their sciences were right and exact, and you cannot ever take that away. We know our sages tell us, the Hachamim say, a wise man is one who was able to learn from all men. So Abraham was able to grasp some of the sciences being immersed in Babylonian or Chaldean culture
That's
as
right.
well during that Renaissance, which is so important. And that's something that we can also, take away from being where we are with the advancements of science and technology and what have you.
That's right. This is also why the Torah uses the term Kasdim that we're
Mm,
translating as Chaldeans in
mm,
several places. The Torah uses it as a replacement for the term astrologer.
mhm,
So there is a separate word for astrologer in the Hebrew language, Kasim,
mhm,
Kasim, and there's another term that doesn't come to mind in a moment, but I know Kasim is one of them, or Kwasim, right?
mhm.
And oftentimes, as I'm reading the Torah or the Bible in Hebrew, and I'm coming across the term astrologer, and at times I see it's this term Kasim, or at times I see it's this term Kasdim, which
Mhm,
is the Chaldean. So
mhm.
the Chaldeans had to be world renowned in history if the Torah makes their very name synonymous with astrology and
Very much
astrologers,
so. Yes, sir.
right? Because we do have a separate word for astrologers. So the
Mhm.
fact that they're used in several places where we're not even talking about Chaldeans or Chaldean people, but their name is mentioned as a moniker for astrology and for
Yeah.
the casting of spells. I think that says a lot
Yes.
about the Chaldean affinity to the knowledge of the stars in the ancient world.
Right. Right.
You know,
Right. You look at the ziggurats. The ziggurats were their observatories, so they were
yes,
they were very very adept at stargazing and understanding the influence and the cycles. Because it wasn't that they were just looking at the stars for looking at the stars' sake. And this is where it gets profound. If I may add this dimension into it,
okay,
I'm of the mind that the first witness that Yah left, in fact, was the stars. You go back to Genesis chapter 1 and you read that the sun, moon, and stars were for signs, right? Seasons and times. And so when you look at that, you can see that there's a story that the constellations bear, right? It talks about a story. And many of our scholars, I won't say all scholars, but many scholars have also alluded to even like the 12 tribes, the 12 disciples having some sort of astro-theological equation as well, right?
yes,
And not completely submitting to that understanding, but we can see how there is some sort of correspondence there. There's some sort of as above, so below correspondence that relates to it that our ancestors well understood, right? Because we were just talking about the esoteric sides of Torah. Yes, there's an exoteric surface side that we can read, but there is also a deeper level to this as well that our ancestors well understood, particularly those who were initiated in the particular arts. But I say that to say, again, going back to the sciences, the ancients were very astute,
yes,
right?
they were.
In their simplicity, in their simplicity. And that's where we have to, I would argue, get back to ourselves, is getting away from, you were talking about, I need to chill from social media. Yeah, sometimes we need to chill from just the internet and get back to our Wi-Fi connection. You know what I mean? Like, we're so plugged into this doggone world wide web that we lose much of our original consciousness,
That's right.
and we have to get back to that and the simplicity of nature and plugging into that and going and start staring at the stars again and seeing how it all relates and looking at those seasons and understanding what appears, because they well knew and understood this to the point, even in Joshua, my last point here, I'm gonna turn it back to you. When I think we brought this up here last time we discussed about Abraham and how the stars were relative to Israel, even when Benjamin returned to Mizraim on the second trip of the Akim to go back and show that their brother was alive, Yosef asked him to locate him using a star chart.
Mm.
And so the stars was something that our ancestors well knew how to navigate.
And just again, point out the source for everyone, because sometimes people will hear something and be like, "Yeah, where's that? Where's that?" So where's that sourced?
That's in the book of Jasher, right? That's in the
All
book of
right,
Jasher.
all
Yes,
right.
sir.
You guys heard it, man. You heard it, and that's important because Joshua is considered an extra biblical book, but certainly a book associated with the Bible, even as it is mentioned.
It was
Right. So
called the first
that's
Genesis, from what I've read. It was called the first Genesis.
you see that. You see that. You see that? So yeah, it's important to source things. Hence why I pulled out a number of books. So the chapter in the book The Sumerians by Samuel Noah Kramer that
Mhm.
mentions that the oldest place names in the region of Sumer are all Semitic is chapter 8, the very last chapter
My
in this
goodness.
book. And there's another conversation that happens, which is going to lead us now into talking about the Anunnaki.
Hmm.
Now, I don't think I've ever spoken on any platform about the Anunnaki. So I'm not sure how far we're gonna go. Let's see how
Yeah,
that turns out.
yeah,
But I'm going to use this opportunity to segue perfectly into talking about the Anunnaki, and
yeah,
mostly for me because, and I'm sure you could resonate. There's a lot of people going around talking about the Anunnaki, and like
yeah.
as a person that really studies the history of that region via actually reading the literature
Hmm.
from that region, when you hear people explain things that you just know is not grounded in what the literature
Hmm.
says, and it's mostly grounded in what is viral on YouTube versus what the
Hmm.
literature says,
Yeah,
then it's hard to take those people serious
yeah,
as much as people tout them as scholars and historians. It's hard to take them serious when you know
hmm,
the literature.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'll say that to say there's a very close similarity between Sumerian culture
Hmm.
and Israelite culture.
Hmm.
One of the not so obvious reasons why is something that was alluded to earlier. Semites have been a part of Sumer from since its inception. The oldest people group in that region are not the isolate group that come to be known as Shumeru, as our ancestors, the Akkadians, refer to Sumerians by the term Shumeru, which comes
Hmm.
into English as Sumerian or
Hmm.
Sumer, whereas
So,
our ancestors call them Shumer or Shumeru, which again, Samuel Noah Kramer even explains that the term Shumer, as coined by Semites, is a reference to Shem, because the ER at the end is known as an immiscible consonant, which means oftentimes when one language is translated from another language, you might lose or drop a consonant. You may add or drop a consonant. So there's something called the immiscibility of Sumerian consonants, particularly the E and the R when it comes into other languages. So our ancestors might say Schumer to refer to the Sumerians, but they're actually talking about the eponymous biblical ancestor Shem.
hmm,
All right. Samuel Noah Kramer points that out in his book as well. So yeah, the not so obvious link between Sumerians and Israelites is that part of the people group that are being called Sumerians are in part Semites.
hmm,
And this is why much of the literature that comes from the region of Mesopotamia, whether it's from the Sumerians, whether
hmm,
it's from the Akkadians, or whether it's from the Chaldeans, whether it's from the Assyrians, much of it has so much of a cognate relation with what we find in the Bible
hmm,
that it has led some authors to write books like the Chaldean Genesis,
hmm,
because the book of Genesis has a striking resemblance to the literature found in the region of Mesopotamia.
My
So
goodness.
much so that George Smith says, "Hey, I'm going to write a book entitled The Chaldean Account of Genesis, the
Yeah.
creation, the fall of man, the Deluge, which is the flood, the Tower
Right.
of Babel, the
Right.
times of the patriarchs Nimrod."
Right.
All of this is
Yeah.
attested to
Yeah.
in the literature of the Sumerians, the
Right.
Akkadians, the Chaldeans, the
Yeah.
Assyrians, all talking about core nuggets that we're finding in the Torah. So,
Yes, sir.
absolutely, bar none, there's a
Right.
resemblance, there's a relation. And where the lazy scholar, hate to say it like that, but where the lazy scholar comes in is in saying, okay, there's an obvious parallel between the stories in the Bible and that in ancient Mesopotamia via the Assyrians, Akkadians, Chaldeans, or Sumerians. Yeah, but we posit, the sloppy scholar, that that's because the Bible theologians copied and stole. So
Mm,
they took these
right,
stories.
right.
I just want to say it. I know you understand this, but I want to say for a lot of people listening, the last thing any serious scholar and historian does is assume foul play in their research.
Come on now.
Like a court of law, a person is supposed to be presumed innocent until proven
Mhm.
guilty. Scholars adopt that same thinking, that same rationale in their approach to unraveling the
Right,
annals of time and history.
right.
I cannot have these unfounded ideas, principles, and opinions about something if it's not grounding in what the evidence shows, suggests, or alludes to.
Mhm.
Two people having a parallel or common themes in their story does
Crucial,
not say that somebody plagiarized or stole. It could
crucial.
say one of two things. Those two groups, people groups, interacted at some point in history. We
Mhm.
know from modern history when people groups interact, there's a conversion of ideas, there's an exchange of commerce, there's an exchange of thoughts, maybe
Mhm.
even religion,
Yep.
right?
Culture.
Or
Mhm.
what if there's a common ancestor that
Mhm.
unites these two seemingly distinct groups of people from
Mhm.
which they both inherit these stories from?
Right. And experiences. Their experience.
Ah,
Their experience alone.
come on.
Going back, you were saying that there's many scholars who have kind of taken this story and ran with it. One in mind being Zachariah Sitchin, right? So his account of the Sumerian or Mesopotamian um, Anunnaki being aliens, all the time when you're dealing with an African culture, you got to always make them aliens. You can't make them,
Always,
human
always,
beings that have some,
always.
adept
Whenever
consciousness.
African ingenuity
Right.
is
It's
above the
alien.
par excellence of the European world, we have
Right.
to say it had to have been because there's no
Right.
way these
Right.
Africans did
They
this, right?
came from the Beru. You know what I mean? So it's like not that they recognize the planet, you know what I'm saying? No, they had to come from the planet. And so that's something that I have to also bring out. And that's something that does drive me crazy as well. But the point that you were making about the proximity of these people together and the shared stories, right? So this perspectives, these are accounts, these are different witnesses to experiences and events that have taken place, right? And so for the Epic of Gilgamesh, for instance, to have a flood and to have, many dynamics and principles that are also present in Torah is not, like you said, it's not plagiarism. Even when you're dealing with the code of Ma'at that the Kemetic people and the Mitzrites deal with, that doesn't make it plagiarism. This is a people whose culture have points of connection and affinity. That happens a
Mm,
lot. And that's what I'm saying, going back to those stars, they recognize the story in the stars. They see what man is to aspire to be. They see that, but they have their own cultural approach. They have their own cultural lifestyles. They have their rituals that may either draw them closer to the truth or even lead them away from it. Because if you're not set apart as Yah has called for his people to be set apart, right? And you're just engaging in rituals that really enhance and inflame the flesh as opposed to really subject ourselves to the spirit, we're never going to tap into the true consciousness that Yah has for us. And
that's
this
a
is
fact.
something that Babylon has done. It has really allowed for carnality to exude and to be, the focus. Whereas with our ancestors, we were more morally um, dis- like disciplined. We were much more morally disciplined than a lot of other cultures, which is why we were so frowned upon. If you look at us in the ancient account, our ancestors were very, very disciplined and guarded in our culture. And so that's a very interesting point that you bring up, though, how that affinity, those points of contact, our ancestors came into contact with many people. And that's what really sets us apart. That's what allows for us to see the distinction between Israel and these other cultures, is how we go about living life in light of our experience with creation and creator.
That's a fact, man. That's a fact. I want to go straight and deep dive into the core nugget of Sumero-Akkadian theology. When you're reading the works of the Atra Asis, when you're reading the works of Enuma Elish, right? When you start reading these great epics, there's some common themes that are shared in the Bible. There's a 7-day creation story. Man is being formed from clay, the dust of the earth, right? There's a great flood. One man and his family, to the number of 8 people, are saved,
Right.
right? Animals are taken, clean and unclean.
My
There's a
goodness.
story of a patriarch who they also posit is the first human being that has a fall, spiritually speaking. We're talking about the fall of Adam and Eve. They have their own parallels in these stories. But if that is not intriguing enough for a lot of people, here's one term that resurfaces continually in scholarly discussions and especially in the YouTube world, and that's the term Anunnaki. Beginning this point of the conversation, I'll pass the mic to you and I'll ask you, what is your understanding of the term and idea of the Anunnaki as posited in Sumero-Akkadian literature?
When I did a little research on this, because I honestly, I'm not a super scholar when it comes to that particular region in terms of dealing with that historical account. But looking up some things, I found that Anunnaki actually means princely seed.
Okay.
Right? It means to be like of a royal line of people, and so you're dealing with the royal line of kings, these rulers that had this line of rulership that elevated that particular Sumerian culture to a particular peak. And so these rulers were very, very powerful in their own rights. Dealing with Anu, who was the chief god, right? To my understanding, Anu was where the name of the Anunnaki, in fact, come from,
Come on.
or Anu, right? So, or An also was his name, who was one of the sky gods, and so he was, to my understanding, the father of the gods and the ruler of the heavens. And so, this is something that you can see in many other cultures where their pantheon does have a hierarchy, and so his hierarchy, this particular hierarchy, had Anu over all. Then his son Enlil comes into the fold of things, and then there's, like I said, many other gods within this particular matter that even break down into another class of gods. I forgot what they're called, but the Anunnaki were like the heights of the gods, and you had another class of gods who also did work as well in this society. But the Anunnaki were the ones that were like they were the heavy hitters.
They sure were. Whenever I think of this term Anunnaki, I draw from what I've learned as well. And being someone that, reads biblical Hebrew and speaks it to a certain extent, I find some interesting parallels immediately. Like, we know the Hebrew word for cloud is Anan, right? Anan. And at times, and that's spelled with an ayin, not an aleph, right? Anan with the letter ayin. At times, we find this same word anan, or a short or a bridge form an, used in the Hebrew Bible to refer to the sky. So in Sumerian literature, the term an is a general term for sky. Then it becomes a term to represent the God of the sky, or the God of the heavens, or i.e., God the Almighty, the all-knowing God, right? The only God, the highest or chief pantheon in the Sumerian pantheon is Anu, the sky god,
Right.
father, as it were. So by name alone, those are some very interesting parallels, right? Anu meaning sky in both Hebrew and early Sumerian, again pointing to the relationship of the oldest place names in Sumer being Semitic, and then look at the names for their gods are also Semitic, right? We're going to break that down, but the Sumerians referred to the earth as Ki, Ki, right? The Sumerian. Matter of fact, let me share my screen just for a moment. Going to be as demonstrative as I can in this live because I want people to be able to see things for themselves. So the Sumerian word for earth, everyone, is ki, right?
Mhm.
Right.
Annunaki.
So Anunnaki
Mhm.
are those who fell from the sky,
From heaven to earth.
from heaven to earth. Sounds familiar?
Nephilim,
Because
maybe?
in the Bible,
Yes.
we have a similar term under a seemingly different name,
Mm-hmm.
Nephilim,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
fallen ones, coming
Yeah.
from the Hebrew root nafal, to fall.
Yes, sir.
And that term is a reference to fallen angels,
Mm-hmm.
fallen angelic principalities on high, or we can just jump right in and say fallen lowercase
Yes,
gods. Because
sir.
remember, what we're calling angel in the Hebrew Bible also
Allah.
is represented by the term Elohim.
Yes, sir.
And what's interesting is I found in my research that the names that we encounter, this is a good book to get everybody, a dictionary of angels, including the fallen angels
Wow.
by Gustav Davidson. One thing that shocked me and blew my mind years ago, I had this book when I was in John Jay College, 1997. What blew my mind about this book is virtually all the names of the false gods that we read about in the Bible are virtually all the names of fallen angels.
Mm-hmm.
They're the same. That's the connection.
Mm-hmm.
What people are referring to as lowercase gods, like they're an actual God. Remember, the Bible
Mm-hmm.
tells you there is no God but the God of
That's
creation.
it. That's it.
However, the Bible employs this term Elohim to refer to angels. And in this dictionary, which draws from the oral tradition,
Mm.
every single, virtually, because there are some that you don't find, but virtually every single
Hmm.
lowercase god, foreign god, idolatrous god that you find in the Bible are virtually all the names of fallen angels in the oral tradition.
My goodness.
From Baal to Ashtaroth, all
Wow.
of them
Yeah.
fallen angels.
My goodness.
So we all automatically now have a connection
Mm-hmm.
because in the Sumerian or Sumero-Akkadian literature, they're referring to a group of principalities on high as Anunnaki. And when you examine their function, it's the same functionality we're reading about angels in the Bible.
Yes, sir.
And the stories they tell are eerily the same,
Mm-hmm.
right? These godlike men or angels coming into our realm, our world, and becoming the heroes of old, the ones who all of the ancient stories and epics are built upon, Zeus and all of these
Mm-hmm.
people that are performing feats that the average human being cannot do, wielding a sword that's 7,000 pounds. What human being could do that, right?
Mm.
So even as the Bible says, when it introduces the Nephilim, it says, and these are the heroes of old. In the Hebrew, it says the men of renown,
Mm.
right? Because all of the ancient epics that were told, the tales, the myths that were told, were based on the historical narrative of these quote unquote fallen angels.
Mm-hmm.
So I immediately, being astute with the culture in Sumer and its literature, automatically see a relationship between the term
Yeah.
Anunnaki and the term Nephilim, the
Yes, sir.
fallen one. So I want you to speak a little bit about that for a moment.
Yeah, something I came across very interesting that takes us even further in the book of Enoch, right?
Come on.
Enoch mentions an entire class of fallen angels, and he uses a word to describe them. In Hebrew, I believe that word is sophah, right? That sophah means watchers. These
Come
were
on.
the watchers, right? But interestingly, if you look in some of the Akkadian texts, I forgot which text it was, but they also refer to the Anunnaki as watchers, right? So these watchers are correlated in the Hebraic account and the Sumerian account, right? So you're seeing that these fallen ones, right? Because when you look at these, the reliefs the bas reliefs in Sumer, and you see these giants. They're holding lions like they're just little pets, right? And you see Sargon depicted as this huge ruler, right? But those were the giants that they were talking about. But were they literally that, or were they just monumental in their approach, right? You think of like even Nimrod, who was a mighty hunter before Elohim, like he was one who was feared, right? Because of his renown in terms of being a mighty hunter, a mighty conqueror, a mighty warrior. And so these men of renown, these giants that are spoken of in Genesis, in the book of Enoch, right? They do have some resemblance and correspondences to what the Anunnaki present or are presented as in the Sumerian literature. So that's pretty much my, like extended that. Like I said, this is something I'm really the sister who we was with last time talking about Abraham, talking about the resurgence of the Anunnaki being these Babylonian gods piqued my interest. That's what really got me, because I wasn't really they weren't on my radar like that. You know what I mean? I have more awareness of some of the Medu Neter and some of the Neteru more so than the Anunnaki. But this is a very interesting topic to get into, and just preparing somewhat for it is something that I'm like, man, this is going to be profound to see how this all connects today, because we got to see this stuff and how to deal with it today as it's being promoted. You see, like brothers like Billy Carson, all due respect to brother Billy Carson, but it's like these are the mind is being promoted in light of saying this is where even Yah comes from. Yah comes from Inky, so it's like, we have to really be able to discern these matters and put it in its rightful place and understand how we are to go about living as Israel, right? So this is very important to bring to the surface. No, I think you're muted. You're muted.
Oh, my apologies. I was saying it's extremely important, man. Even as by the way, I'm holding up the book Cradle of Civilization. Another Samuel Noah Kramer book, Cradles of Civilization.
That's all day.
On page 130, there's an image of an ox head.
Elohim, huh?
See that ox head? Now that ox head in Hebrew we refer to as Aleph, or sometimes Aluf. Like when you want to say oxen, which is the plural of ox in Hebrew, that's Alufim, right? But the root is Aleph. So a lot of people who are new to the Hebrew language and they're looking at things like, let's say, pictographic Hebrew, and they're saying, well, the Aleph represents the ox, and the ox is the strength, and represents robust strength, male vitality, etc., etc. And here's what I want to say. We talk about the term God and its origin in religious communities. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people in different religious circles that are non-Christian based, because Christians don't have a problem saying the word God. Mm-hmm. But in a lot of religious communities, Muslims, some Muslims, not all, 5%ers, Israelites, right? People with what they call the Hotep wave, which I'm going to certainly say is the Kemetic community, right? Mm-hmm. Even they don't like using the term God, and they say, that's because the word God is of German origin. Remember I debated Jabari Osase, and Jabari, who's a professor, interesting, says that the word God is of Germanic origin, mm-hmm. right? Which when you hear things as a person that is deeply rooted in the study of that thing, you automatically can separate the person that's looking through the window as opposed to the person that's on the inside doing the research, holding the books. Mm-hmm. So Jabari, in this respect, is that person looking through the window, and we would be the people that's on the inside actually looking and scourging through the books, because the term God is not of Euro-Germanic origin. Mm-hmm. Like we even find it as early as in the Bible to describe a mountainous power that is unseen, an unseen mountainous power, right? It's called in Aramaic literature the God of the mountain, and the word used in Aramaic is God,
G-A-D,
but spelled in Hebrew with 2 letters, Gimel and Dalet.
Yes, sir.
So that's the oldest word for God
Yeah.
that we see in the Bible,
Point.
but the oldest word for God that we actually see in history is the Sumerian word. Let's go back to my share screen. The Sumerian word, and I'll type it out so everybody can see. Sumerian word for ox. Remember, in Hebrew thought, it's the word for ox that forms part of the word for God, the word El, right? Now, an interesting parallel to that is the Sumerian word for ox literally becomes the word for God. Look at that.
Good. Wow.
Right there,
Yep.
clear as day.
That's
The
powerful.
Sumerian, and this is in the Sumerians, as far as a people group, are said to be the first and oldest civilization. So you're not going to find an attestation for God older than this. So the Sumerian word for ox is God.
That's powerful.
Deity. Powerful, right? Now think about the implications, right? In the Hebrew thought, the ox becomes a symbol for God because of what it represents: strength, power, and prowess. Apparently, the Sumerians understood that perfectly as well, because they used the same animal. Remember, Sumerians as a people group are in part Semitic. So Semites in the Levant are using an ox to describe God, but they're calling that ox El. Semites in southern Mesopotamia are also using an ox to describe God, but they're calling that ox God.
Deep.
So I can rightfully say that the word God traces to what we can now refer to are the Proto-Hebrews, right? Which are early Semites that precede Hebrews, precede Abraham, are using the term God, which is the Sumerian word for ox, to describe the unseen power on high, right? And its power as it manifests in the world, no different than the letters Aleph and Lamed and ox and a shepherd staff are used to represent God by the Hebrews.
Yeah.
So I don't want to stay too far on a tangent because you have skill sets here too, but share your thoughts on some of that and add if necessary.
The language patterns are everything, God. I'm so glad you bring this stuff up because we have to start to see how this stuff develops and evolves over time, right? In the mind behind it. But you see that the pictograms, right? So you're dealing with pictograms as well, right? Cuneiform, you're dealing with the, because when you go back into the older alphabets, of course, they're images, right? And so they're capturing the idea based on the imagery that they have with their experiences. And this is how language forms. This is how we form our ideas and we communicate this stuff, because our ancestors were very creative in ways to find, to communicate. And so this was so important relative to the development of the construct of our alphabet that we have today, and even the language that we use. So again, the points of similarity, the points of affinity are so important for us to recognize, because again, we're not dealing with many points of variation, right? We can actually see that there's a line of consciousness that goes through all these cultures. The key is just to sew these up and to make sure that the revelation is being provided. And that revelation is going to be based on our demonstration that Yah Chai, that Yah lives. That's what's going to shut every mouth and make every knee bend. We just have to put the proof in our work, right? Not in what we're talking about. What we're talking about is secondary. What we're doing, we've been bringing this up every time I've talked with you. Our orthopraxy is going to be so important, but this is something that we're drawing out in order to make sense of it, so that we can actually apply these principles and reveal the true and living El through our agency, because that's what this is ultimately coming down to. I just want to come to that point, but I've definitely am admiring your scholarship with that. Like I said, that's not one of my strong points, and I have no problem deferring to you in this particular matter, because this is important to bring out, because we're dealing with this, and this stuff is being used to spin some minds right now, and we got to see it for what it is. So Toda Rabbah for that. No
You're
doubt.
very welcome, Moreh. Even as we learn from each other, right? Each one teach one. Iron sharpens iron, and the point of think tanks like this on a podcast is that we're sharpening not just one another, but the community because even in
Mm-hmm.
the chat room, community thinkers are already posting their
Yeah,
thoughts,
they
and we're going to
are.
grab some of that and include it in the conversation as well. This is so important for us as a community because it helps to clarify areas of thought as it pertains to ancient history. It's linked to modern peoples and modern tribes and how it all fits in with some of these ancient texts, such as the Bible, the Torah, and other literature. So I want to contrast
Mm-hmm.
when we come back because we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to contrast the term neter and
Mm-hmm.
neteru as used in Egypt to describe the gods of Egypt and parallel that with the Hebrew term Elohim as well as the Sumerian term Anunnaki and
Mm-hmm.
see if at all there's any hidden
Connect.
connection. We'll be
Woo, let's
back.
go. Let's
On
go,
that
Doc.
note, everybody, thumb up the video, share the live stream,
Yes.
patron this platform because continually, week after week, conversation after conversation, we get the right people in the building to feed the community. So help feed us to build and grow this platform. Donate, family. We'll be right back. All right, all right. It's your brother Zion Lex. Sign up for our online academy, which is Learn Torah Hebrew Academy at patreon.com/Learn Torah. There are several classes that we offer. We offer a Biblical Hebrew 101 class for beginners. We have a Biblical Hebrew 102 class for people who are a little bit more advanced. We also have a weekly Torah class. We also have our Patriarchs of the Covenant course, our Matriarchs of the Covenant course, and a bi-weekly rabbinical course. All of these courses can be found on Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/Learn Torah. You guys were definitely in for it. It's a very invasive class. All of our classes are deeply invasive and very, very meticulous to the T when it comes to understanding the culture, the heritage, and the history of our ancient ancestors. So sign up for Biblical Hebrew at patreon.com/Learn Torah. I am your brother, Zion Lex. Powerful, powerful. So on that note, Moreh Miykael, let's talk about the relationship between how the idea of God
Mm-hmm.
is being coined in not just the region of southern Mesopotamia and in the Levant, but even as far as the land of Egypt. What is
Mm-hmm.
your familiarity with the gods of Egypt and what they represent under the banner Neter or Neterum? Share some of your thoughts in that direction.
Yeah, undeniably. So, you can netcha. You can hear the word itself, as relates to what they represent. And you can hear nature in that very clear, right? So these principles, the Netaruf want to understand are principles and dynamics that they use totemically to capture these dynamics that you see in creation. So let's take Shu, the lion head god, right? Shu was the one who was the force of breath, the force of wind. So Shu was a representative of the force of the wind. So you see that in the lion, right? You have also the ibis headed god who was known as Tehuti or Thoth was the god of wisdom. So you see these principles embodied in the ibis bird, who was one that was very patient, one that was very astute and could just balance itself on one leg and go about acquiring its livelihood through very wise and calculated means, right? And so the Netaru, from what I understand, were these dynamics and principles that all went into an ultimate dynamic of their overarching god. I forgot the name of the overarching god, but all of their pantheon was an expression of nature working together to bring forth, the existence that we know as Tameri, the land of Tameri, the land of Hapi, which is the land of the Nile. But this was the fertile lands that you see that the Netaru were to represent. Of course, from there you have Amin Ra, you have Asar and Aset, and you have Heru, right? So you see these trinities, you see the messianic figure through Heru, you see all of
Mm,
the different dynamics that are present in their culture as well, right? And so um the Mitzrite teaching, though, was very, very uh, image based. They were very image based, as we can see. And that's something that I love about our culture, is that we are a culture that had transcended imagery, and we got just to understanding the pure essence of stuff, which we had, of course, with the mitzvah of making no graven images to represent our El. That's something, again, that sets us apart from many of these other cultures, with Elohim and even the celestial court. I know Michael Heisner speaks about the celestial court as well, because while we understand that there is one El does have as well many different messengers and servants that are a part of the sovereignty that takes place. However, when you're looking at, let's take the pantheon of Sumeria and the pantheon of Mitzrayim, these are gods themselves, right? So these are literal gods, as opposed to like messengers that have principality and jurisdiction of their own. So I would look at that delineation, in terms of understanding how, the Israelite cosmology deals more so with the supreme El, and that's it. And then there are servants that go about fulfilling Yah's will, whereas these other cosmologies deal with gods and having their sovereign jurisdiction, let's say over the heavens, over the sea, over the earth, over the storm, right? So there's different gods that express their power through different elements.
That's
And
a
so
fact.
that's how I get it.
That's a fact. I'm always, using the opportunity in the moment of things that a fellow speaker is saying immediately in the room to start hustling in my mind and saying, okay, where are we going with this? What else can we bring out? So I remember doing a word study a couple of years ago on the term netter. I have E.A. Wallace Budge's dictionary on Meta Netra. This is volume 1. It's a 2-volume book. It's very, very
Crucial.
big for people who have this book.
It's crucial.
I have students in my class right now that have taken a hieroglyphic class with me. Shout out to Moreh Eric Dawkins in the room. Not only has he taken my hieroglyphic class, but when I did a museum tour with him and his family, a private tour, he was reading the hieroglyphs from several exhibits based on many things that I was teaching and sharing with him, as well as what he began to learn on his own. So, huge shout out to our academy, Learn Torah Hebrew Academy, for helping to provide an avenue for people to not just reconnect with Hebrew, but even the language in lands that our ancestors sojourned into. We also spoke Aramaic. We have an Aramaic course. Our ancestors were in Egypt. We have a hieroglyphic course. So shout out to you, Moreh Eric, and much love to you, yours, and your family. So again, I'm doing a word study on and again, it's a 2-volume series. All right, so this is 1 and this is 2. And on page 401 is the term netter. And the term netter is described as meaning strength or force. So I automatically learned something, because the Hebrew word for God, El, that literally means strength or power. We use it as the word for El, God, but in the Hebrew language, El literally means strength, force, or power.
Yes, sir.
So it's cognate in its meaning, the term netter and the term El, because they both denote
power, strength, and force.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Now let's go a little step further, because Medu Neter as a language is classified by modern historians as an Afro-Asiatic language.
Oh wow, now that's new to me.
Meaning that Medu Neter, the ancient language of the Egyptians,
Arabic,
Amharic,
yep,
because ancient Cushitic languages, the oldest of them, Amharic being one, is also classified by modern historians as an Afro-Asiatic language. And what they mean by that in calling any language as belonging to the Afro-Asiatic group is that they have grammatical, syntactical, and linguistic relationships.
Yes.
Now, what I always tell people is 2 or more languages sharing a couple of words doesn't mean that one language came from the other at all. At best, what that means when you find loan words, vocabulary words from other languages in these or said languages, that shows interaction at best. So at one point, these 2 people groups may have interacted because we can see similar vocabulary words.
Right.
That's what that tells linguists and scholars that deal with language, right? The genesis of language. Now, where scholars lean on whether or not one language is related to another or comes from another is in the area of grammar and syntax. Grammar is the rules of language, generally speaking, right? Syntax refers to the formation of sentences. Then you have morphology, which is the formation of words, right? So to a linguist, a language is not related to another language because they have a couple of loan words in common. They're related because their grammatical structure is almost identical. So this is why there are certain languages that are belonging to a group known as Afro-Asiatic because they have grammatical and syntactical relationship, which shows at best that either one language does spring from the other or there's a common ancestor to all these languages that unites.
Right.
So me knowing that, because I study linguistics, I said, of course, the term El is cognate in meaning with the term Neter. I can understand that because Egyptians spoke the Afro-Asiatic language. Their language is in part related to ours. And if it's related to ours, is it possible that we have a word called Neter? And is it possible that our word Neter is the same translation?
Wow.
So in comes Exhibit A. The etymological dictionary of biblical Hebrew.
Come on.
And there are people right here from my class that have it, such as Nasika Hadassah. If you open up to page 155 and you come down to the second to last entry, you find the term Neter.
Come on
spelled now. Nun Tate Resh.
Come on now.
And it means to protect.
Ooh.
And it means to imprison or an actual prison. Now think about the relatability of that.
Yes.
Eric Dawkins has the book. He said he's pulling it out right now. I want you to open it up to page 155, and I want you to confirm in the chat exactly what I'm saying. When you see it for yourself, go to the chat and say, guys, Rav Zion, Nasi, he's not playing, is really there. The second to last entry is Neter, spelled Nun Tate Resh.
So it's a Tate.
Right? Tate. And the first thing it says, it's used in the Song of Songs, chapter 1, verse 6, denoting protecting.
Oh, wow.
Then it's used to denote a prison in the book of Jeremiah. Remember Jeremiah was thrown into prison? Well, the prison house that he was thrown in is called in Hebrew Netera. Netera, rooted in the Hebrew word neter. So neter as a Hebrew word means to protect. So where's the relatability? It doesn't mean strength. It doesn't mean power. Yes, it does. Because how do you protect without strength and without power? What keeps a prison up without a stronghold, a strength, a power? So it's building upon the same idea of strength and power. The Hebrew word neter builds upon the term. Eric Dawson said, what page? Go to page 155. Matter of fact, let me take a quick screenshot so that everybody can see, because this is wonderful information. In the meantime, Moreh, if you may, please just jump in. I'm gonna take a screenshot and share it.
I was looking at Songs 1:6, and I see where it says the Netara.
Look at that. Look at that.
It says it literally. It's actually in the it's a notera there, but
Mm,
it's you can tell it's a derivative from the root of neter.
that's right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's powerful.
It's powerful, man.
So this is also the same chapter where it says, "I am dark but lovely. Don't stare at me because I am swarthy, because the sun is gazed upon me. My mother's
Mm.
son quarreled with me. They made me guard the vineyards." There it is.
He
Says,
said, I
"But
see it.
yep,
He said, I
that's
see
what's
it.
up. That's powerful.
Right
That's the
there.
rule." And so to have the force, to have the strength, to have the power to guard, you need that. You can't have someone guarding something if you don't have the power or the force of the
That's
strength
right.
to do so.
That's
My
right.
goodness. That's
So
powerful.
this is the edge that we have coming into these type of studies, because we're able to look at these language families and not only be able to speak about it with conviction, but we're reading it for ourselves. We don't need no translator.
Mhm.
We're reading it for ourselves. And this
Yeah.
is why we say in part to the community, if we can, in our secular life, away from YouTube and away from the community, but just our personal lives, devote ourselves to unlimited laborious hours and time to research this stuff, the least the community could do as the people, us,
Mhm.
that are bringing the information, is support us.
Yes, sir.
Support us, because
Yes,
it's
sir.
not easy to do this at all, man.
It's not.
You know how many hours, how many days I was reading through this hieroglyphic dictionary and never seen that? But I never stopped, and I still don't stop. I'm making discoveries every day. You're doing the same thing in your studies. We're all making discoveries
Yeah.
often,
Yeah.
right? Some people every day or every week, but again, very often.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of resilience to do that.
That's the word
It
I had
takes a
today.
lot of resilience, man.
That's powerful. You know, it makes me think about the Tower of Babel, though. Before the earth had one language, there was one tongue, right? And this is what our mythology talks about, in the sense that there's a common connection that humanity has in word and thought and idea. Language is idiomatic. And I was going to ask you that. Would you also argue that not only the grammatical elements, the syntactical elements, would you also say that there are also idiomatic elements that are shared?
Absolutely.
And that's what I wanted to get to, because the ideas that are captured are just culturally expressed differently, right? And that's where we have to really start to filtrate things properly into a way that we can actually see the universality of Yah's wisdom, so that we can really cause this earth to come back under that Edenic consciousness, right?
Mm.
And we have to get back to that particular matter. So this is crucial. This is very important, because even when you look at the prophetic word of Zephaniah 3 and verse 9, it talks about at that time he will give creation a pure lip, so that we all call upon the name with one shoulder. But these are the ways that we go about doing that. We have to show how these tongues are connected, right? Because you see it even in the Revelation, it's a people from all nations and tribes and peoples and tongues, but we're showing the commonality and the common thread that exists. And we have to recognize that, and we have to stop at times being so divisive in order to bring people into this light, right? It says in Philippians, let your gentleness be made known to all men. The master is near, right? We're looking to bring life to this creation. We're looking to repair the age. And these are ways that we can go about doing it intellectually. So I appreciate this particular platform.
And I appreciate you. So, just looking at the middle nature, the hieroglyphs for a moment, you see the crown. The crown as a consonant is the letter N. This symbol here can be a D or a T. In linguistics, D and T are interchangeable because they're both dental letters. D and T. You can, as you're saying them, you can hear the interchangeability.
Right.
So this symbol here is a D or a T. And then you have the recumbent lion, the lion that's laying down. That's representative of an R. At a certain point in Egyptian literature, it can also represent an L, because in ancient Egyptian literature and language, they don't have an L of their own. So Egyptian language does not originally incorporate the L sound. That sound is borrowed when it's represented in their writing system. And it's usually when they're representing foreign words or talking about foreign people. Like when you see an L in the name Israel on the in the Merneptah stela, which is the first and oldest attestation of the name Israel anywhere in history. The Merneptah stela dated to 1205 BC. Yes, there's an L in there for Israel, and that clearly tells you that we're talking about Israel because the letter L is not represented in Egyptian language. However, they use the glyph for R, which R and L is interchangeable in several languages. Like, for instance, when a lot of Asian speaking people come into America, words that we pronounce with an R, many of them struggle and say it as an L. Words that we pronounce with an L, many of them struggle and say it with an R. In linguistics, the difference between the letters L and R is the movement of your tongue. You're moving it up or down. So when you say L, L, you're bringing your tongue to the roof of your mouth. When you're saying R, R, look with your tongue going down. So linguistically, the difference between the consonant L and R is the stroke of the tongue, whether it is moving up or down. If it moves up, it's L. If it moves down, it's R. This is why the ancient Egyptians use the R glyph to represent the foreign sound L. So again, you have the crown, which is N, this symbol, which is T, and then the recumbent or the line that's laying down, which is an L. So, which is an R here, which is an R here. So together, this says netter, right? Netter. And then you have the glyph here, which is representative of how do we classify this? This glyph is a language classifier, right? So this glyph right here denotes stern judgment, as the person is holding almost like a staff-like individual, a staff-like instrument in his hand, an instrument of force and power, like something that he can beat you with, right? This is a language classifier in the ancient Egyptian tongue. This is referred to in the hieroglyphs as a determinative. A determinative is a language classifier. For instance, the snake that you see here, can you see my arrow on the snake?
Yes.
This is also how you spell netter. One of the beautiful things about hieroglyphs, whereas in Hebrew, if you don't spell a Hebrew word the way it is to be spelled, that's no longer that Hebrew word. Medu Neter is vastly different. Hieroglyphs are vastly different. You could take any glyph of the same consonant, but of the same phonetic, the same sound, albeit a different consonant, to still spell out that name. So the flag means netter on its own. On its own. And when it's like that, it's also serving as a determinative. Or the flag can be the consonant N, and that's its purpose here. So here it says N, the bread loaf is a T, the mouth glyph is an R, and that's a T. So this is Neteret. That's a female. That's the goddess. Like Hebrew, the T at the end in Hebrew consonants denote the feminine, right? And this is also why, remember, when two languages are related, right, truly related, is because they have the same grammatical and syntactical structure. Remember that. So in Hebrew, the T sound feminizes as a suffix Hebrew nouns. The same thing occurs in Medu Neter because it's also an Afro-Asiatic language. So that's why the word for goddess is not simply to say netter, but netert, the T on the end, right? You guys can't see that it's spelled that way in English because I have that part cut off. But this is N-T-R-T, netert. Now, the determinative is a snake because the snake, like the snake in the garden, has divine qualities. What's even more interesting about that, remember, it's the upright snake in the garden that's speaking and has divine qualities, right? So again, the term netter literally shows you that it means strength of force. Now watch this. Look at that Hebrew word right there. What that word say, Moreh?
It says neter.
Come on!
High.
Come on!
Yes, sir.
I think I might have to bring back the bombs for this show.
That's a bomb. That's a bomb.
Huh?
That's a bomb.
Spell it out for us, Moreh, real quick.
Nun, Tet, and Resh. Yes, sir.
And it means in Song of Songs, protecting.
Yeah. That's
right?
powerful. That's powerful.
Number 4, entry 4, a prison. Right? Again, to protect. Again, protection is what? sometimes the armed forces, which serve to do what? Protect the country. They're known as what?
Right.
The armed forces, right?
Forces.
You
To
can't
protect and
protect something
serve.
without strength and power, right?
Not
So
at
you
all.
automatically see the relatability of it all.
Yes.
And that's what I'm saying, my good brother. In delving into the language is always key.
Yes, it is.
Language, this is what I'm from day one. When I came into the community, my first teacher said, learn the language.
Yep.
And I'm glad I listened because I'm a hard-headed person. I don't like to listen to nobody. I don't.
Yeah.
You know, Morabina, when you say bring it back, are you referring to the screen I just had up? Let me know before I take it completely away, because it's still up. I can still show it. I don't know what you mean by bring it back. But yeah, this is why I say language is key. The very first teacher I learned from, his name is Chief of Chief. Well, one of my first teachers, his name is Chief of Chief, Chief Naphtali. May his memory be blessed. He's no longer with us. First thing he told me day one in coming to his class, he said, Abdiel, you got to learn the language, young man. You got to learn the language.
Yes.
The language is key.
Yes, it is.
And he ain't lied.
No.
And I'm glad I listened. So from day one, I understood delving into these ancient languages is really key to unraveling these ancient thought patterns. Because look at how much we're able to weave together and sew together
Yes.
these seemingly distinct ideas just from looking at language.
Yes, sir. Isn't that something about receiving that instruction right there? I ain't gonna get into it too much.
Come on.
But that language, you receiving some instruction, Doc, and we already know what that is. You already know. That's
of
powerful,
course, man. Of course.
Because that's where the mysteries are unfolded right there. When you can really tap into these letters and these words and understand this language, that's when everything becomes so plain.
That's when everything becomes plain. Like, and that's another thing the teachers back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s in the Israelite community used to say. They used to say, make it plain, make it plain. Teach, make it plain. Several times coming up in the temple in the 90s, you hear the elders shout out, make it plain.
Yes, sir.
Make it plain.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, that's a lot. So on that note,
that's beautiful.
I'd like to take us towards what I would say is the end stage of this discussion, right? Because we're in a time right now, a season on the Hebrew calendar, it's the 7th month. And you know, when you tell people that the Gregorian calendar is off, they look at you like you crazy.
Right.
I'm like, first of all, they don't even know what this calendar is called. So when you say Gregorian calendar, you already lost them. Because most people don't know that the calendar we currently follow is referred to the Gregorian calendar, named after Pope Gregory IV, right? They don't know that. We know that. Whoop-de-woo, right? But here's the thing. We say to a person that's new to our way of life and our understanding, listen, the Hebrew calendar says that this season is the 7th month and it's the month of judgment. And it just so happens, and I don't mean that because nothing just so happens, but it just so happens that it also falls under the 7th sign of the zodiac. And people say, that sound kind of deep. But it says September's the 9th month and October's the 10th. So I don't know what Afrocentric stuff you talking, but you got to be off.
Yep.
That's the problem. Because had I been dressed in black face but white skin,
right.
That go over anybody's head?
Right. Right.
Had I been dressed in black face but white skin, had I been a white man delivering this black ethnic information, all eyes would have been in tune, all ears would have been saturated. Yes, a master, teach. You're right. The Gregorian calendar, you're right. Our people don't accept information until a white man co-signs it. Hence, the huge announcement we made the other day that through the halakhic tenet of Tinok Shanishpa, African Americans and African Caribbeans and Africans of the transatlantic diaspora can be classified as returning bloodline Israelites, the chosen seed, through this halakhic status that we have.
Yes, sir.
When we announced that on my platform and detailed it in full, people wrote in the YouTube comment section, where can I go for the official announcement?
You just heard
Let me translate what they want to say.
it. Right.
Where's the YouTube video of a white guy saying this?
Wow.
Because we both know that's what they're really saying. So let's now teach. When you teach people that, listen, the Hebrew calendar says that this is the 7th month, and 7 is a number of judgment. You, without even knowing the Bible, you understand how 7 is related to judgment in your day-to-day life, right? And a person could say, yeah, I understand that. But my brother, we in the 9th month because September's the 9th and October's the 10th. Like, you know, we're in today 10/7, October 7th. So I don't get it. But then I asked the person, say that again. October. And what's the month you said before that? September. Didn't you just say month 7 and month 8? The proof that our calendar is off, the Gregorian calendar, is in its damn name.
Yep.
They call their 9th month September,
which is 7.
That's the Latin word that means 7.
Yep.
They call their 10th month October. It's a Latin word which means 8. Their own calendar is telling you something's wrong.
Right. Yep.
Which means then you got to listen to what I'm saying.
Right.
So we're in the month of judgment, atonement. These are the main themes of this month. Repentance, a necessary key to come into atonement and to successfully pass through the judgment, right?
Right.
But Moreh, when we put on our historian hat and we look at history, we got to acknowledge something. Don't you know there are ancient festivals that say that this month right here, the 7th month in the Hebrew calendar, is the beginning of the year. And it's a time of judgment.
Yeah.
And they still celebrate and observe it today.
Yeah.
In Iraq, Assyrians, whether they be Christian, whether they be Muslim, all celebrate 2 annual festivals under the same name, Akitu. Akitu is celebrated in April. It's a spring festival that marks the beginning of the ecclesiastical New Year. Ecclesiastical New Year.
Yeah.
Then the other Akitu festival is in fall.
My goodness.
That marks the beginning of their civil New Year. Sounds familiar?
Very much so.
So in the Israelite community, there's this ever controversial debate ensuing in conversation that I'm not referring to the first day of the 7th month as Rosh Hashanah because that's a Jewish name and they don't get to dictate the word of God, and you know how Israelites feel, right? I'm not even going to go there. So I'm going to say what the book call it, Yom Teruah. But then comes people who are studious. Maybe people like us. Maybe. And we say, hey, Ak, I'm familiar that the Torah refers to the first day of the 7th month as Yom Teruah in Numbers chapter 11.
Yeah.
And it refers to it as Zikron Teruah in Leviticus 23. But what if I could show you in the book of Ezekiel that he called the 10th day of the 7th month and the season Rosh Hashanah? We're going to do that, Moreh.
Let's go.
But before we go there, I want to ask you, if you can, to weigh in on anything you may know of New Year festivals in the ancient world, dealing with the region of Mesopotamia. Are you familiar with any ancient New Year festivals?
I can honestly say no. Not from that particular perspective, no. I do know some about what our ancestors did in terms of dealing with harvest, right? So we had a lot of ingathering festivals that we were dealing with during this particular season. And this is of course, the shadow, right? And so when you're looking at the agricultural aspects of our culture, that are tied intimately into the spiritual elements, the agricultural matter is dealing with the plentiful harvest, right? And so these plentiful harvests are symbolic of the blessings that Yah has given for our faithfulness, right? And you can look at all religious cultures as dealing with that. That's something that was definitely a transcendent reality in all types of culture. And what I do particularly want to say about this season, and not only dealing with the new year, it is also understood that this is the month that creation was also
Come on.
established, right?
Come on.
And so we're dealing with now the beginning of time as we know it through the expression of Yom Teruah and its cultural associations and its rituals that are also, um, present and are carrying it out. But yeah, that's a very important point to bring there with this here. Now, I want to get to some other things, but I just wanted to just leave that there because this is
Okay.
where we get deep because how we recognize these times is so important. And we talk about signs, and you got to look at the equinoxes, you got to look at the solstice. So when you're talking about spring, that's an equinox. When you're looking at the fall, that's an equinox. That transitions, that lets us know there's a transition that is taking place, right? When you're looking at the solstices, that also is a transition, letting us know that you're going from the longest day to the shorter day. And now you got these equal days here that mark a shift in time.
That's
And so
right.
this is why it's so important for us to recognize the spring and the fall festivals and to know that these particular markers have to take place in order
Mm,
for us to start going into these observances, right? So this is how we get back in alignment with the simplicity of our ancestors who were so in tune with nature, with the nature, the nature,
come on.
and also with the creator. But that's
All of the
important.
forces in creation,
Yes,
man.
sir. All of
You
it's
know,
important.
there's a reason why this conversation that we're having in today's podcast had to proceed orderly by first talking about Abraham
Hmm.
and talking about Abraham as a Sumerian, and then talking about the culture of Sumer and its connection to stories that we're finding in the Bible. And then to go back in the annals of history and say, wait a minute, the oldest Sumerian place names are all Semitic, each and every single one of them.
Powerful.
Not some, not most, the
All.
oldest, all of them. Sumerian place names are all Semitic.
Mm,
That tells scholars that the Proto Sumerians were a
mm,
Semitic people.
my goodness.
And we now know from the history of Sargon of Akkad, who himself is Semitic, he's an Akkadian, Akkadians are a Semitic people, that
Mhm.
Sumerians were, that Semites were a part of the Sumerian Empire because one of the reasons that Sargon was able to conquer Sumer, he conquered
Mm,
it from within. He was a cupbearer to the king of Sumer at
mm,
that time
mm,
and
mm.
had learned about the governmental structure, the seat of power, to the extent that he was able to rise up,
Wow.
revolt, and lead the ushering in of the Akkadian Empire and the conquering of the Sumerian city
Wow.
state. But his story tells us
Hmm.
Semitic people were part of the Sumerian Empire
My
because
goodness.
he too was a Semite. And then the history
Wow.
shows us, of course, Semitic people were part of the Sumerian state and civilization. The oldest place names in the region are all Semitic. So the earliest people in that region were Semitic. So now is where the conversation gets powerful, right? Because
Yes, sir.
now we got to use our thinking caps. Hey, I'm not with that Rosh Hashanah stuff. In fact, because they be big mad when you show them some stuff they haven't read yet. I went on Google, and Google said Rosh Hashanah come out of Babylon. The Babylonians, they got a New Year festival too, huh?
My goodness.
They got it from the ancient Sumerians.
Wow.
You know what the kids say today? Oh, you thought you hit with that. You know what I want to say? And this is where we divide the scholars from the people that's on Google.
Mm,
Because if we're following the conversation, Of course, the Babylonians would have a New Year festival that parallels and is a direct counter to ours, because the culture they inherit is a Semitic culture, and these ideas didn't start with Father Abraham. The New Year marks the creation of the world, something you mentioned earlier. Abraham wasn't here at the creation of the world.
Mm-mm.
Of course, the Babylonians would have a New Year festival similar to that of ours, because the culture that they inherit is a Sumerian culture, and a huge nugget of Sumerian culture is of Semitic ideology.
Hmm.
This is the scholarly divide that needs to be emphasized in these conversations here. When people are saying, oh, the Bible stories is eerily similar to Sumer.
Hmm.
No sugar, honey, iced tea, Sherlock. You know what I want to say, right?
And
No,
real quick, again, I was referring back to the sciences, right? When we look at the sciences and the advancements that the Babylonians have left us with, we can't just like categorically reject everything that they have left us. That's not prudent. You know what I mean? There's some things that they have done that undeniably contribute to the evolution of humanity, right? It's just we don't look at all of their culture and embrace everything in terms of their spiritual practices and things of that way. That's he says don't serve the Elohim like these people serve Elohim. Don't
come
don't
on.
do that, right? But if you're looking at what they're doing in terms of like their knowledge base, in terms of how they apply their principles to develop, like there's wisdom in that, right?
That's
And that's
right.
something that we have to consider. That's how we
That's right.
grow as a humanity, So there's some things that we can syncretize that are good for the whole, but of course we have to learn how to rightfully divide what we need to divide. You know what I mean? I think that's very important.
That's extremely important. I'm about ready to show a brief PowerPoint, Moreh, that kind
Let's
of
go.
goes into some of these ideas and showing the parallels. All right.
Let's go.
Um, let's go. And at any point, I want you also to jump in on any slide of your choice, and share any additional information that need necessary for you to point out.
No doubt.
All right. So here we are, family. Um, today's live stream is entitled Abraham, the Sumerians, Anunnaki, and the Ancient New Year's Festivals. In this dialogue, we showed a clear connection. This conversation, we showed a clear connection between Abraham coming up out of the region of Sumer, as well as pointing out historically that the region of Sumer is known historically to have been inhabited by Semitic speaking people, even to the extent that we can say the Proto-Sumerians are a Semitic stock of people. They're also known as the Proto-Euphratean people. The Proto-Euphratean people are a Semitic people. The Proto-Southern Mesopotamian peoples are a Semitic-speaking people, and there's enough historical data that not simply suggests it, but proves it. This means then the cultural ideologies and ideas of spirituality that are coming in Akkadian literature, Sumerian literature, later on in history, Assyrian literature, later on in history, Babylonian literature, all have their foundation in either Sumerian ideas apart from the Semitic people of Sumer, as well as the Semitic people in Sumer. So it's a hodgepodge of indigenous Sumerian tribes that are not of Semitic stock, as well as Semitic speaking people living in Sumer who are classified as being part of the Sumerian rites. No different than us all living here in America and there being so many ethnicities, but we are all classified as Americans if you're born here. but all of us are aware of the cultural and ethnic diversity to understand that there are so many different tribes of people here. We're not all of American origin, but we're all classified as American. So I say in this respect, everyone, I really want everybody to understand this. The term Sumer and Sumerian, when it refers to people, is not a monolithic term. It doesn't describe just one ethnicity of people. There were many ethnic peoples living in the region of Sumer, and the Semites were the dominant ethnicity in the region. So, of course, the stories that are told in the Babylonian epics share a commonality with the stories we read in the Torah, because it is told predominantly by Semitic-speaking tribes, descendants and ancestors of Father Abraham.
Power.
So now let's move. The Babylonian New Year ritual, known as Akitu, is observed in both Nisanu, which is an Akkadian term, and Tashritu.
My goodness.
So the current Hebrew calendar that we follow calls the month of Aviv, which is a Hebrew name to describe that the first month on the calendar. It's called in the modern Hebrew calendar Nisan, but we know from the Bible it's called Aviv. That term Nisan is borrowed from a much earlier Semitic term coming out of the region of Sumer, which is Nisanu. And the term for the current 7th month in the Hebrew calendar, which people say came out of Babylon, but what a lot of people must know is the Babylonians are a newer group in the world. The older group in that region is known as the Sumerians. And before Babylonians are talking about Tishri, Sumerians are talking about Tashritu. The term Tashritu literally means beginning.
My goodness.
The Aramaic term Tishri means not just beginning, but as well as a tone. And there's a cultural conversation for why that is, but I don't have enough time to go there. So the term Nisanu and Tashritu are cognate with the terms Nisan and Tishri, and they're celebrated in both spring and fall, and they contain the following elements: combat, victory, creation, divine enthronement, and judgment. And the source for that is the cults of Uruk in Babylon, the temple ritual text as evidence for Hellenistic cult practice, pages 219 through 220, as well as page 228. We really doing this, Moreh. We don't play with citation of information. We done been through so many debates that we know if you don't cite the information, people gonna be watching, talking about, oh, they made that up.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm gonna keep pushing. Before I keep pushing, I want to just point out something that might not be so obvious. Notice that it's noted in this book that the months of Nisanu and Tishri are both spring and fall New Year ceremonies. Why is that remarkably significant? When I tell the masses of Israelites that we had more than one New Year that we followed, even in this country, there's more than one New Year. There's a New Year for when a president comes to office. That's January 20th. There's the actual New Year, January 1st. There's the fiscal governmental year. Right? We already know that there are several New Years in this country. So it shouldn't be far-fetched to understand when I say our oral tradition tells us that we had 4 New Years. There's a New Year in Nisan or Aviv because the Creator reset the calendar. Nah, he made that up. Exodus 12:1 says, "This month shall be to you the beginning of months." He didn't say, "Listen, Israel, you lost a lot of knowledge through your Egyptian captivity. So what you probably didn't know is that this is the first month on the calendar." I didn't read him saying that. What I read is the Creator dictating through the hand of Moses that we should understand that from this day forward, this month shall be the beginning of months to you, which begs the question. If this is now the beginning of months to commemorate the Exodus events, that's a powerful thing. But what was the original ordering of the calendar if because of the Exodus, you're now changing the order? Israelites don't think about those questions, but scholars have to.
Yes, sir.
Right? We have to. So
Right.
we already know that there's already an implication in Exodus 12 and 1 that there's an older calendar that orders differently. History, the history of the region of Mesopotamia and even the Levant teaches us what the original ordering is, as well as the Torah. But I want to really hone in on this before I go back to the PowerPoint. When we tell the masses of Israelites that Rosh Hashanah, the 7th month, is also a new year, nah, you made that up. That's Jewish. In fact, the Jewish people got it from the Babylonians, which is where it really came from. I say, really? Yeah, the Babylonians celebrated a New Year's festival in the 7th month around what you call a Rosh Hashanah.
That's crazy.
So I say, oh, really? So what about the month of Nisan Aviv? Because we're clearly seeing on the screen right now that Nisanu is also a Babylonian New Year. So if you're going to tell me that Rosh Hashanah is originally a Babylonian New Year, whoop-de-whoop, I'm going to take you through history and show you that the Babylonians also celebrated the first of Aviv as a new year. So now what you're going to say?
Wow.
What you're going to need is an intelligent argument. What you might need to do is join Learn Torah Hebrew Academy or reach out directly to Moreh Miykael Korban Yahu so you can get some real knowledge. Because newsflash, the Babylonians celebrated 2 New Year ceremonies, one in the month of Nisan and the other in the month of Tishri, just as we do. So it's lazy scholarship to say, oh, it's the Babylonians, it's the Babylonians. The time for lazy scholarship is up, Moreh. And people that have energy like us, that don't mind doing the work, are showing every day why we need to stop being lazy in this community.
That's powerful.
So let's keep it pushing.
Push it.
Depending on the time and place, the Mesopotamian New Year began either in the beginning of autumn, on the first day of the 7th month called Tashritu, which is the origin of the Hebrew month name Tishri, not yet found in the Bible, literally meaning beginning. That's what Tishri means. And in the beginning of spring, which is the second New Year festival celebrated by early Mesopotamians, on the first day of the month called Nisanu, Hebrew Nisan, found in the late biblical texts of Esther 3 and 7. So once again, Hebrews, you got to step your scholarship up. Rosh Hashanah is not a Babylonian New Year because the Babylonians celebrated it. Yeah, we are aware that the Babylonians at this time, the time we're in right now, observed the New Year. But the greater question that a real scholar asks is, why?
That's it right there.
From whence did the Babylonians inherit this culture? Because Babylonians are not the oldest people group in this region. The Sumerians are. And we know that the dominant ethnicity in ancient Sumer was Semitic people. So of course they celebrated a New Year's around this time because those are our earliest ancestors.
Right. And again, if I can just frame this around the agricultural element as well. We have to always look at the practical elements of this, right? Because this was things that took place that celebrated the harvest. And I cannot overemphasize this point because this is how our ancestors connected with deity. This is how they connected with the spiritual elements and recognizing the holistic aspect of life. So when they're having these festivals, yes, they're entirely connecting it to the Most High, but it was also something that was about this harvest that they were bringing in, which has a whole spiritual dynamic to it. So these are things that human beings experience the world over, right? So these are lines that we can use to bring people in and to understand this is the meaning of this. So when Shaul is in the Areopagus and he's encountering all these people worshiping these gods, he had to have a point of reference to connect with the people.
Come on.
These are points of references to connect with the people to show them the true meaning.
And just to show people that it's not just Abraham that was living there. Sometimes when we're reimagining the biblical narrative and its stories as Israelites, some people think it was just Abraham that lived in Sumer. Like Abraham and his family always lived in the land of Canaan, but like how people move today, Abraham moved to Miami and lived there for a while, and then he came back to New York or Israel. No, Abraham and his lineage have been living in that region for many, many years.
Yeah.
The proof in the pudding that it's not just Father Abraham that was there. The Bible tells us in the book of Joshua, chapter 24, your father served other gods on the other side of the river Euphrates.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What?
Yeah. But think about
In
it.
the
Noah.
era, just this is last point. In the era of Joshua, right? This is before the Torah is even given to the people in terms of its narrative. The Torah as a legal document is there. But the narrative of the Torah, the stories that surround it, ain't even there yet. And Joshua tells the people through the Creator, Joshua is a prophet, your fathers served other gods on the other side of the river Euphrates, which means two things. Our ancestors lived on the other side of the river Euphrates, the region that we're calling Sumer, the region we're calling Akkad, the region we're calling Mesopotamia, the land between the two rivers, right?
Right.
And the second thing is we were deeply immersed in the culture of that region, even to the extent that we followed the idolatrous culture in that region. We served other gods there. Jump in, my apologies.
I mean, just think about where Noah ended up after the deluge, y'all. Like he was further east. You know what I mean? So where did the people go? They spread out from there. And so we have to really understand that whole dynamic. Like if we're just so isolated on the Levant and don't see that our presence and the knowledge and the consciousness of Yah was far east as well, then we're really like just deluding ourselves and not understanding how Yah has always used people the world over in different areas to bring his culture to the people.
Fact.
And this is what's taking place. This is exactly what took place in Sumer as well.
That's exactly what took place. So let me jump right back into this presentation and share some more wonderful information. In the meantime, family, we will be taking a quick commercial break. I'm going to ask our family to throw up the video and share the live stream. I'm also going to ask Moreh Miykael to share his Cash App so the community can endorse his time, his effort, and his sacrifice of time away from family. He could be watching TV right now with family, checking homework with the kids, but instead he's here giving out free information just as I am. So we always ask, can the community support the sacrifice that we made by also going into your pocket and doing a little sacrifice yourself? In the meantime, family, all donations do not have to be in the form of money. Share the live stream, thumb up the video. We'll be right back. Shalom, shalom, family. This is your brother Abdiel Ben Levi, otherwise known as Zion Lex. Go to Amazon and purchase all of my books. Type in my author name, Abdiel Ben Levi, or you can also type in Zion Lex. There you'll find some of my earliest books and my latest works. It was written and engraved. The DNA of Sound, The Star of David Controversy, Ancient Kemet on Trial, Patriarchs of the Covenant, Matriarchs of the Covenant, and my two foremost books that are critically acclaimed on Amazon, and even one has become a bestseller, and that's going to be the Messiah Codex Volume 1 and Messiah Codex Volume 2. So go to Amazon.com today, type in my name, Abdiel Ben Levi, otherwise known as Zion Lex, and there you can purchase all of my books. Peace and shalom, family. All right, and we are back. So thank you, family, for all of your amazing efforts in helping to spread more awareness of this platform. Also, do remember that Moreh Miykael has just placed a link where you can find his latest books. He's an author, everyone. He's also an author, right? You can find his books on Amazon. I'm sure Barnes & Nobles has an online connection as well, for those of you who use that as well. But go to Amazon and purchase his book. He put a link to it in the chat. And please do, family, show your love and support for his sacrifice and his time by sending him a donation as well. Those of you who are watching live and those of you who also will be watching later when this video goes up on YouTube. He's been with us for quite some time now, delving into these dialogues. And in my opinion, he's a formidable force in this community and somebody that we should get behind and support. On that note, Moreh, I'm going to jump right into the PowerPoint and share some more, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And moderators, please reshare the link to his Cash App and his books throughout the duration of this live stream periodically. Thank you all very much.
Let me say one thing before you go to
Yes.
on the PowerPoint. You talked about how the themes that were around the seasons of the first and the seventh month were
Mm-hmm.
combat and victory,
Yes.
were
Judgment,
judgment. And you look at that, and you look
creation.
at creation. So you look at what our culture expresses and celebrates during that particular time. You have the coming out of Mitzrayim, the combat
Hmm.
against the Mitzrites, right? So the victory of overcoming that.
That's
You look
right.
at the judgment that took place with the 10 plagues, right? So all
That's
this
right.
stuff
The
is like,
Creator's called a man of war with the Egyptian
oh, come
Exodus.
on, not yes,
Victory.
indeed. Chapter 50, yeah, yeah, chapter 15, clear. So yeah, I love it. So this is all in alignment. And again, all we're wanting to do is bring the element of the true and living El back to this particular reality. That's all we're wanting to do.
That's all we're wanting to do. So thank you, family. We're gonna forward right now. And here we go again, Moreh Miykael. At any point, stop me if you want to share something or if you want to highlight something. All right. So I'll take it back from the top. Depending on the time and place, the Mesopotamian New Year began either in the beginning of autumn, which is fall, on the first day of the seventh month called Tashritu, the origin of the Hebrew name Tishri, not yet found in the Bible, literally meaning beginning, and in the beginning of spring, on the first day of the first month called Nisanu, Hebrew Nisan, found in the late biblical text, Esther 3 and 7, Nehemiah 2 and 1. Originally, Nisan is a Sumerian word meaning first fruit offering. What are we bringing on the morrow after the Shabbat of the Feast of Unleavened Bread? Come on, y'all.
Yes, sir.
Come
Bikharim.
on. Bikurim. Come on.
Yes, sir.
Thus, even the names of both months exhibit their calendrical roles as beginnings. So let's be clear what we're learning so far. Semites living in the region of southern Mesopotamia celebrated for thousands of years at least two New Years. The first New Year they celebrated was during what we call now the seventh month, which is the month of Tishri. It's called in the Hebrew Bible Etanim. The other New Year that they followed was in the month of Nisan, which is called in the Bible Abiv.
Mm-hmm. That's rich.
Why does Rosh Hashanah have three names? Meaning the first day of the seventh month is known by three names historically. Let's see why that is. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 40 and 1, it reads, in the 25th year of our exile, Be Rosh Hashanah, which translates as in the head or in the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month, that was Yom Kippur, in the 14th year after the city was struck down, on that very day, the hand of the Lord was on me and he brought me there to the temple. What is Ezekiel talking about? Ezekiel has a vision of the presence of the Creator manifesting itself before him during the season and time of Yom Kippur, which was actually during what's called a Yovel or Jubilee year. It was a Jubilee year that year. You guys will see that in a couple of moments. And I'm hoping that all of us as Bible readers know that all Jubilees are proclaimed during the seventh month, yes, particularly indeed, around the ingathering feast, which is Sukkot. All right. So this was a Jubilee year. And look at how Ezekiel describes this season. Rosh Hashanah. Come on, I'm going to show that to you guys in the Hebrew in a couple of moments. According to rabbinical tradition, there are in fact 4 New Years, each serving a unique purpose. Just like our ancestors in the southern Mesopotamia, the first of Tishri is a new year. Tu B'Shavat is a new year for trees, which is the 15th of the month of Shavat. Our ecclesiastical new year, a new year for redemption, a new year for when kings come to throne, is on the 1st of Nisan or in the 1st of the Hebrew month of Abiv. Then there's a new year for temple tithing. Temple tithing, all tithes that are brought to the temple.
Fiscal year.
The way that is annexed and collected doesn't happen at the same time of New Year as the other New Years in the Bible. It has its own New Year. So the New Year for the tithing of cattle begins in the 1st of Elul. So what we know historically and through our tradition that we always, as a people group, the Israelites had 4 New Years.
That's profound.
Now let's get more heavy. This is our Hebrew calendar, right? Our modern current calendar. We see the month of Nisan, which is here the first month. In Nisan, we have the Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Again, first fruits. The same first fruits that was even celebrated in Babylon. So what Israelites going to say now? When we just read that the Babylonians had a first fruit ceremony during the month of Nisan. What y'all going to say now? That's Babylonian origin too? You better know that it was the culture of your ancestors, and your ancestors were in Babylon. Hello.
Yes.
Tishri is regarded as the 7th month, right? But let's think about something. We just spoke about earlier that the Creator says in Exodus 12:1 that the month of Aviv shall be the beginning of months to us, which is the month of Nisan. So if from that time onward, Nisan or Aviv would be the beginning of months, that begs a question, Moreh. What was the original ordering of the Hebrew calendar if the Creator clearly changed it during the Exodus? Let's take a look at that. Now the Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, this month shall be the beginning of months for you. It is to be the first month of the year, and I always pay attention to words. He says to you.
To you.
That's like me telling my kids, you can't have this and you can't have this. This is forbidden to you. You see that bottle of King David wine imported from Israel? you and you can't have that.
Right.
I never said I can't.
Right.
So think about it. The Creator emphasizes in the biblical text that Aviv is the first month to us.
It's a designation.
Think about that, Moreh. If he says it's the first month to us, he's also saying something. Right. It can't just be the first month, period.
Right.
He says it shall be the first month to you.
Right.
So my question is, what is it to him?
What is Yah's first month? Exactly.
What is it in relation to creation and the original calendar?
There you go.
Remember, he changes it because of the Exodus event, and let's not marginalize it. This was a beautiful and powerful thing. But there's still an implication here that there was an older calendar. Where else in the Bible do we see that there was an older calendar? Let's move. In the story of Noah, Genesis chapter 7 and 11, it says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. According to Genesis 7 and 11, Noah's flood began in the 2nd month, on the 17th day. Let me tell you something, Moreh. My birthday is the 17th of Cheshvan. Cheshvan as a word denotes the biblical flood. Cheshvan is the current 8th month on the Hebrew calendar.
Okay.
And if anybody was to look it up right now, you'd see for yourself, just like we fact-checked information earlier. I need everybody to look at this.
Wow.
Noah's flood occurred on the 17th of Cheshvan, pronounced in Hebrew Keshwan, but you're going to need to type it with a V, Keshvan. On the 17th day of Keshvan, which is my Hebrew birthday, that's the day that Noah's flood started.
My goodness.
What's interesting about that? Let's go back to the PowerPoint. We see, looking at the calendar, that the flood of Noah took place in Keshvan. But Moreh, on our current calendar, Keshvan is the 8th month.
It's the 8th month, right?
But in the book of Genesis, it calls it the 2nd month.
My goodness. So
if what we now call the 8th month was originally the 2nd month, I have a question, Moreh.
What's the first month?
Would the original first month have been?
Tishri. There you go. Tishri. Yes, sir. That makes sense.
I heard somewhere, study and show yourself approved.
My goodness.
The Creator clearly said that He changed and reset the calendar. This shall be the beginning of months to you. We know Noah's flood happened in the month of Keshvan.
That's powerful.
But the problem is, Keshvan is the 8th month. But time out. Keshvan is only the 8th month because of the calendar reset in Exodus 12 and 1, which means Tishri was originally the first. And if Tishri was originally the first, that's why we also call it Rosh Hashanah. And even the name tells you it's the first, because as you saw earlier, Tishri literally means beginning. Come on.
That's rich.
Are we not done, Moreh? There's more.
That's rich.
There's more. Let me pause for a moment and make sure the community is understanding what's happening here.
They awful quiet right now.
Because when you see the chat this quiet, that's because you got people doing this.
Hey, that's rich. Yo, that's rich.
Yeah, man. It's always a beautiful moment when you can say something that yields a thought-provoking moment, where you literally are leaving people speechless. Because the proof is always in the pudding. And I'm going to say it right now. And it's bold to say, you can't disprove what I just showed.
No.
You can't. The floor is yours. But I know you can't disprove what I just showed.
Right.
History bears witness to what I just said. The Torah bears witness to what I just said. Let's go right back to that beautiful being footage, because there's more to unpack and explore. We are in teaching mode. Here we go. Let's take it a step further now, because I believe in exhausting information. Like, for instance, I hate to say this, that Diddler trial that's about to happen, where 100 girls are coming out today and 400 tomorrow, and this new case, there's something in legalese called a preponderance of evidence. They gonna throw so much stuff on his case to where it's almost impossible for him to deny the truth of their claim. So I'm gonna tell y'all, I went to a law school, John Jay College. And the way we were trained to look at evidence and compile evidence is in the frame of legalese, a preponderance of evidence. So that wasn't a one and done. For a lot of people, what I just showed is sufficient to end the conversation. But coming from a legal background, it doesn't stop there. We're going to get deeper. There's more. There's more. There we go. Mar Keshvan. The word Mar means bitter in Hebrew. Comes from the Akkadian word Wara Samnu, literally 8th month. Sometimes shortened or abbreviated to Keshvan. So even our ancestors are referring to this as the 8th month, right? The standard Tiberian pronunciation, Keshwan, is the 2nd month of the civil year, which starts on the 1st of Tishri. What did they just say? Keshvan,
right,
as a civil year for the early Mesopotamians, was considered the 2nd month on their calendar.
My goodness.
Even they knew it was the 2nd month. Just like clearly Noah knew and Moses knew it was originally the 2nd month. Let's move. And the 8th month on the ecclesiastical calendar, which starts on Nisan. Let's move. Now, I wanted to examine in context that Ezekiel mentioned. In Ezekiel chapter 40 and 1, it says, in the 25th year of our galut, which is the Hebrew word for exile, in Rosh Hashanah, which is the Yovel of the Jubilee. Anybody curious about what translation I'm going by? This is the Orthodox Jewish Bible translation, OJB.
I like it.
This is a strict literal Hebrew translation. So Ezekiel refers to this period as Rosh Hashanah. They add in the brackets, because of the time period in the history, that this was during a Hebrew Jubilee.
Mm-hmm.
So we should definitely know, because Israelites argue me. They say, all right, I do see in the Hebrew Ark that Ezekiel calls this Rosh Hashanah, which
Mm-hmm.
means beginning of the year. But how we know that he ain't talking about Aviv? Because that's the new year. So as far as I'm concerned, Rosh Hashanah is Aviv. And he was talking about Aviv. No, he wasn't. Because this was during a Jubilee year. And the Jubilee is not proclaimed during Aviv, it's proclaimed during the 7th month.
Yeah. This is Yom Kippur all day.
And as we say in Learn Torah Hebrew Academy, Moreh, the work is easy when you're well studied.
Yes, sir.
In the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year, Ezekiel provides us, Moreh, with so much information. We know the year.
Yeah.
It was 573 BCE.
My goodness.
I'm going to get a little deeper in the year in a couple of moments, by the way. I came with some work today.
Let's go.
In the 14th year, which was 573 BCE, after the fall, in the self-same day, the hand of the Lord was upon me and brought me there in the night vision. Let's move on. Now, this is my commentary and my handwriting. Now, let me shift gears and put on my historian hat. Ezekiel provides us with 3 points of reference to verify whether or not the new year he's talking about is either in Tishri or Aviv. For he provides the time period, the post-exilic year. He says it was the 25th year of our exile. Well, we know when the exile started. He then provides the day of the month. He said it was the 10th day. He finally provides the advent or beginning of the exile. He said it was the 14th year after the city was conquered. Now that we have those historical dates which Ezekiel provided in this passage, we can now verify it with the ancient calendar to see if the vision he was talking about took place as Rosh Hashanah in Tishri or Aviv. It comes out that the calendar date, based on the accurate historical information Ezekiel pointed out for us, verifies that this did indeed take place during the month of Tishri, September, on the 10th day of Tishri, which was the 12th of September that year. In the Hebrew calendar year, 3189, and in the Gregorian calendar year, 573 BCE.
Wow.
That's work. That's work. We came with work today.
That's work. That's work. We're gonna get that work.
Come on. As Eastgate says in the chat, high level of instruction.
Yeah.
Come on, y'all.
This is critical. This is critical. Orientation is everything, and we have to reorient ourselves correctly as relates to time. So this is so essential, lot. If we're not on y'all's time, we ain't, and we on Gregory's time, we out. You know what I'm saying?
Out.
We got to get this back. We
out. But usually I don't do this, but go ahead. There's some more. There's more.
This is rich.
And this is what I like to call the icing on the cake. In the book of Exodus, chapter 34, 22, it says, "You shall observe the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end." Israelites, I'm not sure if you know this, but the feast of ingathering is Sukkot.
Right.
And look at what it calls Sukkot. It says in the English translation that the feast of ingathering is at the year's end. But Moreh, we read Hebrew.
Right.
I see Hashanah, that's year.
Right.
But Tekufat don't mean year's end. Tekufat means turning or circle. This literally says at the turn of the year. December 31st into January 1st marks the turning or change from the old to the new year. Was that Moses just literally telling us that the 7th month marks with the seasons, the turning of the new year from the old to the new? Nah, Zion, you reaching. You reaching. All right, Tekufat does also mean to turn. That's a fact, Zion. And Shana means year. So this does say at the year's turning. But how do we know that the feast and gathering is Sukkot? I still think this is Abiv.
Wow.
Israelites always want a dead idea to live. So let me prove through the Torah that the Feast of Ingathering, which the Torah tells us marks the turn of the year, is in Sukkot. Easy work, Moreh. Look at it.
Easy work. That's easy right there.
In Leviticus 23, it says, verse 39, also in the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruit of the land.
Ingathering.
What is the ingathering? When you have gathered in the fruit of the land.
Yeah.
When is the ingathering feast?
It's that 7th month.
Sukkot. You shall keep a feast to the Lord. On the first day shall be a Sabbath. On the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. And you shall take on the first day the boughs of goodly trees. Sounding like Sukkot to anybody? Branches of palm trees and the boughs of thick trees and willows of the brook. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God for 7 days. Does it sound like Sukkot to anybody? Fast forward to verse 42. And you shall dwell in booths. We know we're talking about Sukkot.
Clear.
Clear. Moses just called the season of the 7th month that marks Sukkot. He says it's the turn of the year. I don't know what else y'all need to hear to understand that this is a new year. Oh, Moreh, I brought some more stuff.
Strapped.
The word for in the beginning, the first word of the Bible is Bereshit, right? Our ancestors teach that the first month on the Hebrew calendar is Tishri, because Tishri was the date in which the world was created, the beginning of it all.
Yeah.
Well, Moreh, if you rearrange the letters in the word Bereshit, it literally spells Aleph, Be, Tishri, the first of Tishri. Same 6 letters, Beit, Resh, Aleph, Shin, Yod, Tav, Aleph, Beit, Tav, Shin, Resh, Yod.
That's the code.
On that note,
encoded. It's encoded.
I ain't got nothing else to say, bro.
It's encoded, and the numerical equivalent, the gematria of it, it all lines up.
It all lines up.
It all lines up. The value, and so this is. I love it. I love it. In putting this before our eyes, we have to reckon with the times and make sure that we are in alignment with the will of Yah. Right. The point that I would want to bring out, the newness of the year. This is about the rebirth. This is about our renewal. This is about our resurrection. This is about even the word that we use from our study this past Shabbat was the reincarnation of the collective soul of Israel, and making sure we're embodying the consciousness of Torah and showing the world the meaning of all this. Once again, these harvest festivals are important, but we have to show them what their import is. In the renewing of our lives, right? In the resurrection from our dead ways, and bringing this all into alignment with the will of Yah. Because that's what this all comes down to, is we're lining this up with Yah's will. So this is profound. This is profound.
Absolutely profound. And I want to say something in closing, as my closing thought, Moreh. There's a common denominator as a problem in the Israelite community. Old and young alike. Teacher and student alike. Great personality to the new jack that just came in alike. And that common denominator as a problem that is rampant in this community is the lack of humility and the preponderance of ego and pride. You know, it's a person's ego and pride to hear what we're saying, disagree with it without even fact checking it, dismissing it because that's not something they learned and they were taught. I wasn't taught that, so I don't want to hear it. That's Babylonian. Or when I tell you this community is full of, and I'm gonna say this with all due respect, but I'm gonna speak my truth.
Let's go.
I know the Creator didn't allow me to come in this world to be so respectful and fearful of any man that it should prevent me from speaking the truth. Moreh, this community is full of lazy teachers.
My goodness.
Some of these teachers are known as Morehs. Some of these teachers are known as priests, chief priests. Some of these teachers are known as princes, chief princes. Some of these teachers are known as HaKohen.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are known as rabbis,
Yep.
chief rabbis. And the
Yes.
common denominator is lack of humility, preponderance of ego, and lazy scholarship. Because there's no way in hell in 2024 we're still this ignorant in the community, Moreh.
Yes. That's profound. That's profound. And it tells us in the Apocrypha that we shall be preoccupied with office. And you even think what Mashiach talked about with the fast Sadducees and the scribes. Like they want to have the largest to fill in, the longest seat, you know. But where's the work? Where's the work? So that's yeah. And that's some things that we have to definitely wrestle with. And everybody has to do their due diligence. This is what it talks about, you know, all of us shall be taught of Yah, right? That's how the peace shall increase in our streets. We all have to do this due diligence. If you're relying only on Rav Avdiel to get your information and you're not doing your research yourself, then you're setting yourself up, right? We got to make sure that we are all eating this word. You know what I mean? We got to get this bread metabolized and digested. Well, digested before it can metabolize, because that's what this is all about. You know what I mean? This is what the whole new covenant is about, to have that Torah written on our heart and put in our inward parts. This is how we do it. You got to study this word.
That's a fact.
Yes, sir.
It's a fact. This is a community that limits its studies because that's a Jewish book. That's not in the Bible. I only read the Bible. You celebrate Hanukkah? Yeah. Where'd you find that in the Bible?
Right.
You clearly reading outside the Bible. How many commandments we got? 613. Show me that verse in the Bible that says there's 613. Right. And when you can't find it, I'll open the Talmud and show you where that's first stated. Y'all already following things that's not in the Bible. Period. We already are.
Yeah. Yeah.
The time for lazy scholarship is done. Today's a new day. And as much as I love the past leadership, one thing I know for sure, two things I know for certain, the Creator's word don't stop for nobody. So there's older people in the community that refuse to step down, even though they forgot more than they know. Old heads tell you that. Son, don't debate me. I done forgot more than you know.
Real talk.
Respect. But you ain't supposed to still be teaching though. Not new information. I mean, we could rely on you for experiential knowledge, knowledge that relates to experience. Yeah, we want to hear all your experiences, but you're not going to forward lateral the movement to the next level with old information. That's us.
Yeah.
That's now. It's the next generation now. And just so we clear Moreh, our time soon up as teachers too.
Yes, sir.
And it's going to be time for that next generation now to step in next.
Yes, sir.
And we just made the work that much
easier.
As the generation before us made our work, that much easier.
Yeah.
And that's how the legacy continues. You add your stamp, I add mine. We reassess what the elders brought, look at it, make a determination on whether or not corrections need be made, because ain't nobody's information perfect. If there is, we adjust them, correct them, and that's called Sankofa.
Go back to the source. Let's go.
And bring it into the present now.
Yeah.
On that note, all I can say is all praise to the Most High. I have nothing else to say. The closing of the show is on you, Moreh.
Man, I'm just humbled by just being here, you know, and having an opportunity to not only share, but to listen and learn. I consider myself a student. I'm a Talmud, you know what I mean? And my whole goal is to reflect the image and likeness of Yah that he is, you know, made all of us to reflect as he's called us into this priesthood. And so, you know, I'm so joyful to be a part of this community, man. I love it. And just knowing that we are just really linking up and locking up and making sure that we're about this kingdom, because that's what this really comes down to. We need to bring this kingdom forward. The whole earth is in darkness, but we have the light. We are the light, right? And so this, and every show that I know Rav Avdiel brings forth, you know, it's making these dark places that much lighter. And that's why we got to continue to share this work and do our part as well. Whatever role you play in the community, keep playing your role. You know what I mean? Like, just take it and run, and make sure that you are doing your diligence and putting in the work. So that is so important, that what we do present, we can present it boldly and boast that we know Yah. And what we don't know, we can just humbly admit, like, that's not my strong suit. I have no qualm saying that. Like, if I
That's
don't
right.
know, I'm be like, look,
I'm
that's
the
not my
same.
strength. You know what I
I'm
mean?
the same.
Yes, sir.
There's many a live streams where the teacher in me becomes a student, and I get my pen and my pad out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking notes, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
they said. And a lot of times when I'm doing these podcasts, y'all see me at the bookshelf as the person talking, and I'm yeah, as a podcast host and fellow speaker, I'm gonna need to come back and say something. But not everything I'm jotting down are things I'm saying out on a podcast. There are things I'm
Mm-hmm.
also jotting down that I'm going to research later because I too am learning.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's the best way to do it.
Best
So,
way to
man,
do it, man.
once again, thank you for having me on the show, my brother. I appreciate you all. I appreciate the community for you all's comments as well. Much love to you all. And if you do have a love offering you want to share, don't be shy. You know what I mean? I'll definitely receive some of that love
Come
as
on,
well,
come
and
on.
definitely reciprocate. You know what I mean? Because that's what this is about. We got to support one another.
That's
You
right.
know, you talked about saying Kofa. You know, we got to get this Kuji Chagalia also in the Kaumba, the creativity, but most importantly, the Ujima and the Ujama. We got to get this collective work responsibility and cooperative economics going.
Mm,
All this, we got to get
come
all
on.
that. Our culture is so vast. You know what I mean? We have to look at the lines of connection as well. This is where the wisdom points come in. What are the lines of connection, and how do we esteem Yah in it all? Like, that's what it comes down to, Wak. So that's huge, Wak.
That's what it
That's
comes down
huge.
to. On that note, family, we out. Uh, we have a Torah class tomorrow at 8 p.m. More than likely, we'll be live. May it be the will of the Creator with the chief rabbi in Israel. That should be
Mm.
delightful and powerful. I know he has a lot to say. And check for us. We should be live tomorrow between either 9 a.m. or 12 p.m. New York City time is when we'll go live. I'll send out the notifications early.
Right, sir.
Make sure if you're not subscribed to this channel, you're new here, subscribe. There's a lot of people here that are subscribed that say, I didn't even know you was live. Don't forget to hit the notification bell,
There you go.
you know? And on that note, family, thank you all. It's been an amazing time. We're really about helping and putting in our screw, right? Getting our hammer and putting in our screw to help to build and take the community to the next level. And then it's going to be someone younger and newer that's watching live now, as well as that's out there in this community, that's going to be able to come and do the same thing. And again, that's how the legacy continues. I hope and pray that you guys enjoyed what was shared. I hope and pray that you learned. I hope and pray that you have enough integrity to challenge the information shared, to go back and research everything shared when you replay the video, because we not the people that say our knowledge is fail safe. Remember, the time for lazy scholarship is over. When I share information, I share them with sources. Go back and research. There's a reason why in college, when you're writing a college paper, your teacher tells you, cite your sources. I'm going to need this paper written APA style. I'm going to need this paper to be well cited. Why? Because how do I know that the information is clear and concise if it's not delivered in a professional manner, APA style? Or how do I know that the information is accurate if it's not well cited for me to go back and research it? There's a reason why, guys, I made sure to cite sources in this conversation. When you replay the video, fact check it. And it's after you'll fact check it that the fire emoji you put on a live stream will really be meaningful.
Mm.
You fact checked it and you know it was deserving. On that note, we out. All right. It's your brother Zion Lex. Sign up for our online academy. which is Learn Torah Hebrew Academy at patreon.com/Learn Torah. There are several classes that we offer. We offer a Biblical Hebrew 101 class for beginners. We have a Biblical Hebrew 102 class for people who are a little bit more advanced. We also have a weekly Torah class. We also have our Patriarchs of the Covenant course, our Matriarchs of the Covenant course, and a bi-weekly rabbinical course. All of these courses can be found on Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/Learn Torah. You guys are definitely in for it. It's a very invasive class. All of our classes are deeply invasive and very, very meticulous to the T when it comes to understanding the culture, the heritage, and the history of our ancient ancestors. So sign up for Biblical Hebrew at patreon.com/Learn Torah. I am your brother, Zion Lex.
I was personally very amazed by your level. I was not just one that I told you. I did not knew. But what I've seen today in many yeshiva that I put my legs where I went through, many are not at your level at all. And I will really say to all the people who study under you to believe that they have a real master. Because the way you receive us, the way you explain the Torah, the fire you bring through your explanation, it's like a stamp on the fact that you are a real one, a real sages. It will be my honor to share, to talk more about Learn Torah Hebrew Academy.
All right, perfect. So again, it's amazing to be here with Rav Zion and just, having this conversation. And the conversation is great. It's also, I also feel like it's a gift for me as well, because there's so many deep and amazing insights that Rav Zion brings out, and it gets me thinking. And when I look back on these conversations, on YouTube, I hear a lot of the things he's saying again, and it's like, wow, that was really deep. And the other, I talked to other rabbis too in our community, and they said, yeah, I saw the thing you do with Lex Zion. He's like, and I was like, yeah. He's like, they're like, he knows a lot. And I'm like, yeah. Like, but like they said, he's like, he knows a lot,
Caribbean Kitchen, foods offer 7 unique blends of premium, low-sodium Jamaican seasoning that will add a burst of flavor to your dishes. Our authentic, all-natural Jamaican seasonings are a game changer when it comes to adding a burst of flavor to your dishes. Our products are kosher, all-natural, contains ingredients that are gluten-free and GMO-free. Our seasonings are handcrafted with the highest quality ingredients. We source our ingredients from the Caribbean to capture the authentic taste of the islands. Unleash your creativity in the kitchen and savor the taste of the Caribbean with our spice blends.
Caribbean kitchen food, where the spices dance. From jerky curry, give your dishes a chance. Seasoning so vibrant, like a tropical breeze. For the finest flavors, it's a culinary tease. Savor the sunshine in every single bite. Caribbean kitchen food, more flavors are just right. With every pinch and sprinkle, a journey will begin to the island